Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had a hidden agenda part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story apprentice of weiserr from 𝐬𝐻. So let's start the video. Izuku paces back and forth across the hotel room, dragging deep breaths in through his nose and out through his mouth in an attempt to quell the nerves arising in his stomach. I can do this. I can do this, he chants to himself just under his breath, wishing the self-pep talk were doing anything to reassure him. From where he's lounging on his bed, Denki pauses his channel surfing, remote still raised as he quirks an eyebrow at Izuku. You gonna be alright there, bud? Need me to get you a paper bag or something? Izuku's pacing continues as he shakes his head. No, I'm fine. Just nervous is all. Denki snorts. I couldn't tell. Just relax, man, 𝐬𝐻 unhelpfully supplies, as though relaxing weren't the very feat Izuku is currently trying to accomplish. This author guy is a person just like the rest of us. No need to stress, as if that were the source of his anxiety. Okay, yes, Izuku is a little nervous about possibly meeting Yagi Toshinori, but he's been able to reframe those particular nerves as excitement, not fear. No, the real source of his anxiety is what comes after the convention, the true reason for embarking on this road trip, finally confronting his father. Of course, the others don't know this. They can't know this. So Izuku has to play along, attribute his nerves to the convention and the convention alone, pretend there's no greater strife boiling in his core, threatening to spill over. Easy enough, right? Bottling things up inside until they inevitably explode is the true mark of masculinity. Anyways, I'm hilarious. Still, Izuku tries to take 𝐬𝐻's advice to heart. He takes a deep breath, pausing his pacing as he releases it slowly. Right, he's just a person. No big deal. Toshinori is just a person. No stress. His father is just a person. No stress. 𝐬𝐻 claps him on the shoulder as he passes by. You got this, man. He flops onto the bed next to Denki. And if worst comes to worst, just imagine him in his underwear. Works every time. Denki wrinkles his nose. When has that ever worked? 𝐬𝐻 shrugs. I mean, I haven't done it personally, but it must have worked for somebody if it's still such a common piece of advice. Denki hums doubtfully. I don't know. I just feel like, in any situation where I'd need to calm my nerves, imagining someone in their underwear would make the situation worse, not better. Maybe you're just imagining the wrong type of underwear. Denki frowns at him. And what would the right type of underwear be? Well, before 𝐬𝐻 can answer, a freshly showered Katsuki exits the bathroom, and 𝐬𝐻 takes the opportunity to quickly change the subject. Hey man, you ready to go explore? Change of plans, Katsuki says, stuffing his sleep clothes back into his duffel bag. I'm going to the convention. 3 pairs of owlish eyes turn on him. He meets them with a frown. What? Sorry, 𝐬𝐻 pauses, squinting at the other boy. I think I heard you wrong. You want to go to the convention? Katsuki returns the look. Yes, with Izuku, 𝐬𝐻 stipulates slowly, as though maybe Katsuki hadn't considered that particular aspect of his decision. Yes, Katsuki repeats, annoyance creeping into his voice. Of your own free will. Katsuki huffs, rolling his eyes. Yes, okay. Now stop looking at me like that. 𝐬𝐻 in fact does not stop looking at him like that. Katsuki sighs. Look, somebody's gotta make sure the loser doesn't end up dead in a back alley somewhere. And neither you or Denki are responsible enough for it. Hey now, Denki protests, jolting upright on the bed. I'm plenty responsible, right? Katsuki drawls, rolling his eyes as he zips up his bag. And the Lethbridge trip was just a fluke. Denki groans, flopping back against the bed. Can't we just forget about the Lethbridge trip and move on already? Trust me, we'd love to, 𝐬𝐻 says, clutching a hand dramatically to his chest, but the trauma is still too fresh, too deep. We may never get over it. Denki smacks him with a pillow. 𝐬𝐻 just laughs it off. Katsuki shakes his head in amusement, disappointment. Honestly, it could go either way. Come on, nerd. We're leaving. And it's only then that a very vital piece of the conversation clicks in Izuku's mind. His muscles tense. Are you sure you want to come to the convention? He asks, voice steady despite his nerves. I mean, I know how much you hate big crowds and noisy strangers and, well, me. Katsuki shoves his phone and wallet into the back pocket of his jeans, not sparing Izuku a glance before snatching his keys off of the dresser. I'm leaving, and I will leave you behind if you don't hurry up. Izuku's shoulders slump, but he knows better than to argue further. Really, he should be grateful to have Katsuki's support, no matter how coarse it may be. Maybe he's finally starting to see Izuku as more of a friend. Maybe he's just trying to avoid 𝐬𝐻 and Denki. The latter is more likely, but you can't blame Izuku for being hopeful. Still, it puts a damper on his initial plans. He'll have to think of some other way to ditch the others and confront his father without causing too much of a scene. Shouldn't be too difficult, right? But there's no time for planning just yet. Tick-tock, loser, 𝐬𝐧𝐿 calls over his shoulder, already halfway out the door. I'm hurrying. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 quickly scrambles to gather up his things, slipping on his shoes before scurrying out the door after 𝐬𝐧𝐿. Denki wishes him luck just before the door closes behind him. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 takes a deep breath, ignoring 𝐬𝐧𝐿's impatient shouting ahead of him. He may need more than luck to survive today. Oh my god, did you see these keychains? They're so cute. I want like 1,000,000. Wait, check out those paintings. They're so realistic. Holy, did you see that? That armor must have taken forever to craft. It's easy for 𝐬𝐡𝐚 to forget his nerves, darting between booths at FanCon. There's so much to take in. Almost too much, but 𝐬𝐡𝐚 is determined to see all of it, fueled by a childlike excitement and an indelible curiosity. He glides across the con floor on a wave of euphoria that not even 𝐬𝐧𝐿's ever-present foul temperament can sour. That doesn't mean the other boy doesn't try though. Those keychains would fall apart in a matter of days. And the armor was wildly inaccurate, 𝐬𝐧𝐿 informs him, trailing just behind 𝐬𝐡𝐚 with a scowl on his face and hands shoved deep into his pockets. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 barely spares him a glance, eyes trained to an assortment of pins. You're just jealous that you can't craft foam like that. Trust me, I remember your young age all-might costume you made for Halloween that one year. 𝐬𝐧𝐿 scoffs. Yeah, the costume I made when I was like 13. Not a grown-ass adult. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 shrugs, moving along to the next booth that catches his eye, one selling elaborate jewelry. Maybe he could find a present for his mom. A little something to say sorry for acting weird about your pregnancy. I'm happy for you, I just have crippling emotional issues. Would earrings work for that? Or should he think bigger? Well, now that you are an adult, maybe you should give it another try. No way, I'm not a loser like you, 𝐬𝐧𝐿 spits, before gesturing around at the crowd, or like any of these nerds. I mean, no wonder you wanted to come here so badly. You're finally amongst your kind. They're your kind, too, 𝐬𝐡𝐚 points out, eyeing a gorgeous pendant necklace fitted with a glittering silvery stone. You're just too embarrassed to admit that you actually like this so-called nerd stuff because you were led to believe that anything enjoyed predominantly by women, especially teenage girls, shouldn't be taken seriously. How much for this one? He directs the question towards the booth's vendor, gesturing at the aforementioned necklace. $50, the vendor says before gesturing to another tray, or $30 if you also buy the matching earrings. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 shrugs and reaches for his wallet to pull out cash. After completing his purchase, he and 𝐬𝐧𝐿 continue down the line of vendors. First of all, 𝐬𝐧𝐿 says, returning to their prior conversation, I call it nerd shit, not nerd stuff. I mean, seriously, is it even possible for your mouth to form swear words? 𝐬𝐡𝐚 thinks on it a moment. She stuff. He shrugs. Guess not. 𝐬𝐧𝐿 snorts. And second, I'm not embarrassed by this shit, He pauses, jaw working as he searches for the right words. I just don't like it in the same way everyone here does, okay. I'm not obsessive or whatever. Passionate, 𝐬𝐡𝐚 corrects, poring over another vendor's booth. You need to be intentional with your language. Sports fans are passionate, but sci-fi or fantasy or whatever fans are obsessive. It's reductive, completely undermines the important feminist work being done in the industry. Right, sorry, 𝐬𝐧𝐿 concedes. But the eye roll he adds makes the apology much less sincere. I'm not as passionate as everybody else, so what? 𝐬𝐡𝐚 shrugs a shoulder. So nothing. But just because you aren't passionate about this stuff doesn't mean you can ridicule everyone who is. It's just plain rude. 𝐬𝐧𝐿 scoffs. Are you done yet? 𝐬𝐡𝐚 hums. For now, at least. They round the corner of another booth, and down the row 𝐬𝐡𝐚 spies the All Might booth, the booth where Yagi Toshinori is and has been ever since they arrived at the convention hours earlier. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 has lost track of the number of times they've passed by that booth, never having the nerve to stop and check it out. His childhood hero so close and yet still so far, trapped behind a sea of never-ending excuses. The line's way too long, let's come back when it's shorter. He's eating his lunch now, we shouldn't bother him. Let's grab some water first. I need to be properly hydrated. I don't know, the energy just seems off right now, and I don't want to risk it. 𝐬𝐡𝐚's eyes fixate on the booth once again, doing his best to steal his nerves. I'm gonna do it this time. I'm finally gonna meet him. 𝐬𝐧𝐿 groans. Deku, I have to, 𝐬𝐡𝐚 insists, pulling his eyes away from the booth to meet 𝐬𝐧𝐿's gaze. And I mean it this time, I'm not leaving Reno until I do. You say that like it's a bad thing, 𝐬𝐧𝐿 says with a snort. 𝐬𝐡𝐚 hardens his gaze. I'm serious, 𝐬𝐴HKIN. So am I, he replies, crossing his arms over his chest. 𝐬𝐴HKIN, Deku. They hold each other's gazes, unwavering and resolute until finally, 𝐬𝐽 breaks, rolling his eyes scoffing. Fine, whatever. We'll walk by one more time, but if you chicken out again, I'm leaving you here. Got it, 𝐬𝐴HKIN grins, totally not believing the threat. Come on, I've got a good feeling about it this time. Slow down, 𝐬𝐽 grumbles, grudgingly following 𝐬𝐡𝐚 as he takes off in a rush down the row. The booth isn't going anywhere. Dumbass, hey, wait, don't, Deku, I swear to God, you better not pass by the booth. Izuku's steps don't slow, even as the All Might booth comes and goes. Still, he doesn't make it far before a hand reaches out and latches around his bicep, dragging him back. Nah, not a chance, Katsuki says, pulling Izuku into the line up to the booth. You dragged me down to Reno also you could meet this loser, so you damn well better do it. Right, I'm gonna do this. Izuku squares his shoulders resolutely, hands clenched into fists. Katsuki rolls his eyes. About time. Now let's get this over with so we can get the fuck out of here. The line to the All Might booth is long, but considerably less so than it was earlier in the day. Still, Katsuki grumbles unhappily at the slow progression of the line. But he also objects to waiting for Izuku outside of the convention hall, so he'll just have to suffer in his stubbornness. Izuku isn't particularly thrilled with the lineup either, but he had expected it. They're at FanCon after all. Lineups are one of the primary attractions here. But unlike Katsuki, Izuku's excitement keeps his spirits high, growing steadily stronger the closer they get to the booth. Katsuki shuffles uncomfortably from foot to foot. The crowd must be getting to him finally. The exhaustion of constant human interaction is beginning to wear on Izuku's mind too, but he's managed to keep it at bay for the most part. Seriously, you can just wait outside for me, Izuku tells Katsuki not for the first time, seeing the way the tension lines the other boy's shoulders. I won't take too long, and I'm probably not going to get kidnapped or murdered or anything in the short time we're apart. Please, murder would be a blessing, Katsuki grumbles, as though his justification for tagging along hadn't been to keep Izuku from getting killed. And don't pity me, I'm fine. I can handle standing in a line. The fact that Katsuki looks ready to literally jump out of his skin betrays his dismissive words, but Izuku lets it slide. It's the best way to handle Katsuki in these situations. The line inches forward. Katsuki huffs a disgruntled breath through his nose. Izuku lets his eyes wander the convention hall, seeking a distraction from his companion's antics. He finds one easily enough. The messenger bag of the person in line ahead of them is covered in a variety of pins and buttons, and Izuku notices a sleek set of All Might buttons. And look, Izuku isn't usually one for striking up a conversation with strangers. But when one of the aforementioned buttons happens to be a super rare vintage misprint button from the original All Might merch line, he's prepared to step a little out of his comfort zone. Hey, he says, drawing the attention of the person ahead of him. Your All Might buttons are super cool. I can't believe you managed to get the misprint Silver Age button. That must have cost you a fortune. Oh, the stranger stutters, half red, half white hair falling and obscuring his face slightly as he glances down at the aforementioned pins. They didn't cost me anything, actually. My father paid for them. Not that he's aware. In fact, he'd most likely get an aneurysm if he found out I used his credit card to purchase All Might merchandise. My father does not like Yagi Tashinori, which is why I bought it. I'm not really a fan of my father's. Boy, Katsuki cuts the stranger off. You make it a habit to go around spouting off about your daddy issues to everyone. The stranger lifts his head to look at Katsuki, and it's then that Izuku notices his mismatched eyes. The stranger is vaguely familiar, but Izuku can't quite place it. No, the other man says, I only share my struggles with those I deem trustworthy. Don't go making assumptions about us, Katsuki shouts, drawing the attention of many bystanders. You just met us, you dumbass half-naff bastard. My name is not half and half, the stranger replies evenly, unfazed by Katsuki's outburst. It's Shoto. And then it clicks. Wait, Shoto as in Shoto Todoroki? Izuku asks, eyes widening. As in the son of Enji Todoroki, creator of the Endeavor series. Unfortunately, Shoto sighs, gazing down at the floor. My father sees Tashinori as his enemy, and he wants me to have nothing to do with him. I decided to defy my father by coming here today to meet Tashinori. His gaze shifts back up to the pair. Are you here to meet Yagi Tashinori as well? Before Izuku can reply, Katsuki scoffs. Nah, we just love standing in lines. Ah, I see, Shoto nods seriously. Kaken, don't be rude, Izuku scolds his companion. He turns to Shoto. Yeah, we're here to see Tashinori. He's basically my childhood hero. I hope to be a writer just like him someday. I'm Izuku, by the way, he tacks on as an afterthought. And this is my not friend, Katsuki. Oi, don't go giving my name out to strangers. Shoto quirks a brow at the not friends part, but otherwise, his face is impassive. It's nice meeting you both. The line shifts again, and it's Shoto's turn to approach the booth. He takes a deep breath. Well, here I go, he says, tipping his head in farewell. Good luck with your writing. Izuku waves in return. Thanks, and good luck with your father. Katsuki mumbles something under his breath that Izuku doesn't catch. Izuku frowns. What? Just, never mind, Katsuki says, shaking his head. Finally, it's their turn to approach the booth, passing Shoto on the way. Shoto gazes irreverently down at the autographed portrait in his hands, a small smile breaching his impassive visage, and Izuku's excitement only builds. Yagi Toshinori is a lanky man, with long blonde hair swept back and deep sunken cheeks. Even so, he exudes a certain confidence and charisma characteristic of a man twice his stature. He greets the duo as they approach, grinning widely. "Hello, thanks for coming, and for waiting so patiently. These lineups are crazy, aren't they? You're telling me," Katsuki grumbles under his breath, but Izuku isn't sure if Toshinori hears him. Hopefully not. The last thing he needs right now is Katsuki ruining what could possibly be the greatest moment of his life. "Hi, I'm Izuku." He introduces himself before Katsuki can get another word in. "I'm a huge fan. I mean, obviously I'm a fan. Otherwise I wouldn't be here, but anyways, I just wanted to say that I loved All Might. The books at least. The show left something to be desired, but your writing. It's incredible. It actually inspired me to become a writer, though I haven't really written much yet, but I'm getting there, and oh my god, I'm rambling. I'm so sorry." Toshinori just chuckles at this. "Don't worry about it. I love hearing people talk about how great I am, and how much better my books were than the TV show." Izuku shrugs. "It's not even a competition, honestly. Your books. I found them when I was at a pretty bad place in my life, and reading them helped me get through those hard times. I mean, the whole idea of twisting fate, and of not letting the past define you." He lets the sentence trail off, then takes a deep breath, recollecting his thought. "It was a reminder for me that no matter what had happened before, I had the power to overcome it, to make the future into whatever I wanted it to be. I don't want to sound cliché or melodramatic or anything, but honestly, I don't know what I would have done without your books. Thank you." Toshinori takes a deep breath, leaning his elbows against the table before him. "You know, Izuku, when I first started writing All Might, I wasn't sure if I'd succeed. I didn't know if anyone would like the books, if they'd be accepted by a publisher, if they'd sell. Hell, I wasn't even sure how I was going to define success." He chuckles, shaking his head. "But then I decided, if my books helped at least one person, then it'd all be worth it. That's how I define success for myself. So Izuku, thank you. Thank you for making me a success." I don't," Izuku stutters, heat building in his eyes. God, why did he have to get so emotional now of all times? He can feel Katsuki's gaze burning into his back, but he pointedly ignores it, rubbing at his eyes. "I'm sorry, I'm crying now." Toshinori chuckles, reaching across the table to grip Izuku's shoulder comfortingly. "Hey, there's nothing wrong with crying. And I'm not just saying that because I'm about to start crying myself." Izuku chuckles at this, and when he finally manages to drag his eyes up to meet Toshinori's gaze, he realizes that the other wasn't lying. His eyes do look wet. Toshinori continues, "Izuku, you are immensely brave for having endured your hardships, and immeasurably powerful for not letting those hardships jade you. Now, bear with me, cause I'm going to get preaky here." Izuku nods, wiping away a stray tear as Toshinori carries on. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, kid. Don't let the traumas of the past prevent you from achieving the future you desire. And always remember, the best way to honor the past is to move forward from it." "All right." Izuku nods again. Toshinori grins, then claps him on the shoulder. "Now come on. I'd like to get a selfie with you, if that's okay. I'll give you a free autograph in exchange." They take a few pictures together, Toshinori leaning awkwardly across the table as they squish into the frame together. Izuku gets one on his phone, and he knows he'll hate the photo later. His eyes are puffy and rimmed with red, his cheeks stained with tear tracks. But in that moment, it's the greatest picture he's ever seen. He gets his autograph, clutching it to his chest. As Toshinori settles back into his seat, he turns his attention to Katsuki. Honestly, Izuku had forgotten he was still there, the other boy uncharacteristically quiet throughout the exchange. "You a fan of the books as well?" Katsuki shrugs a shoulder, gaze settled somewhere on the table rather than on Toshinori. "They were all right, I guess. The fight scenes were cool." Toshinori chuckles, a man of simple tastes. "I can appreciate that." He uncaps a marker, asking, "Can I sign anything for you?" Katsuki pulls a small book from his back pocket. Izuku recognizes it as the autograph book his father had gotten him around his 8th birthday or so. "This, if you don't mind." "Not at all." Toshinori accepts the book, flipping it open to a blank page. "Hey, Katsuki starts, weirdly bashful, eyes flitting quickly to Izuku before returning to Toshinori, dropping his voice slightly. "You really believe all that stuff you wrote about? Like, redemption, people changing and shit?" Toshinori smiles, something much softer than before. "Yes, I really do. It is my firm belief that what makes us truly human is our constant ability to change. No matter who we are or who we have been, we always have a choice about who we can become. And we owe it to ourselves to become better, even if only a little." Katsuki snorts. "You sound like one of those shitty inspirational posters." Toshinori shrugs. "It's a hazard of the job, I suppose." He quickly scribbles out an autograph and a short note, then caps his marker and hands the book back to Katsuki. There you are, all set. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 accepts the book with a nod. Thanks, it's nothing. 𝗧𝗏 grins. Thank you both for supporting the books and for coming out today. It was a pleasure meeting both of you. You as well, 𝐬𝐸 says, waving farewell as he and 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 depart. They cross the convention hall in silence for a moment, until surprisingly, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 breaks it, clearing his throat. You good? He asks, voice almost timid, unsure. 𝐬𝐸's tears had subsided almost as quickly as they came. And although he was still working to truly process 𝗧𝗏's advice, he can't help but feel much lighter than he had coming here. Warmth settled in his core and spreading out into his limbs. So he simply smiles, nodding. Yeah, I'm good. Are you? 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 considers the question, jaw working momentarily. Yeah, he decides eventually, sighing. Yeah, I am. And then they cut to the next scene, starting partway through a largely unimportant conversation between the two lead characters that serves to establish the passing of time and a change of setting without too much boring exposition. 𝐬𝐸 explains, pausing to take a sip from his frozen lemonade. I mean, it's still kind of exposition why, but the audience will forgive it because it's hidden in dialogue. He and 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 sit at a table outside of the exhibition hall, putting some distance between themselves and the clamor of the convention. 𝐬𝐸 had needed some space to process all that Yagi 𝗧𝗏 had said, while 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 looked as though he were about to strangle the next stranger who brushed up too close to him. So, after acquiring some refreshments from the food stalls near the hall's entrance, the two had found a calm and comfortable place to recollect their bearings. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 leans back in his plastic chair, eyes narrowed inquisitively rather than angrily, although the two looks are nearly indecipherable from one another on his permanently frowning face. That seems like a pretty cheap plot device. It is, 𝐬𝐸 concedes, tilting his head in acknowledgement, but you have to admit, it's pretty effective. Keeps everything moving so you can get to the important stuff. I mean, people don't just launch into deep, personal monologues on a whim. You've got to build up to that sort of thing. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 scoffs. No, you don't. People love to talk about themselves. If given the opportunity, they'll launch into a monologue about their deepest, darkest secrets at the drop of a hat. I mean, you should know this, you've worked retail. Prove it then, 𝐬𝐸 challenges, arms crossed over his chest. Why do you hate me? 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 hesitates, lips pressed into a firm line. 𝐬𝐸 cocks an eyebrow, waiting. Finally, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 sighs. Fuck off. See, there wasn't enough build-up, so the conversation doesn't work. 𝐬𝐸 grins triumphantly, slurping from his straw. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 rolls his eyes. Whatever, stop looking at me like that. He reaches across the table to swat at 𝐬𝐸, who dodges easily, leaning back in his chair and out of 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's reach, frozen lemonade still clutched in his hands. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 groans, settling back into his seat. Tell me more about your shitty story. What happens next? Well, I'm not actually sure. 𝐬𝐸 places his drink back on the table, pondering the question a moment. You see, my novel is roughly based on this road trip, so I can't plan anything out that hasn't happened yet. And so far, I've told you everything that happens up until this point, so I don't know what happens next. Sure, he has ideas as to what could happen next, but he can't exactly share those plans with 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 now. There's no way the other boy would support him in his father-finding endeavors. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 hums, idly fidgeting with his water bottle. Well, whatever happens better be pretty damn good, 'cause honestly, your story sort of sucks so far. Hey, besides, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 continues, ignoring 𝐬𝐸's outburst, it sounds kind of familiar. I'm pretty sure Sherman Alexei already did the whole two estranged friends on a road trip thing. 𝐬𝐸 sees an opportunity, so he jumps on it. So you admit that we're friends. Estranged friends, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 stipulates. And I didn't say that we were, I just said that it's like that. Well, whether it's been done before or not doesn't matter. Road trips have been used as a framing device for hundreds of stories. Yet each of those stories is different. 𝐬𝐸 shrugs, stirring his drink with his straw. Why can't mine be? Yours'll be different, all right. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 agrees, a smirk tugging at his lips. Boring as hell, but different. I mean, it's not like we're trying to recover your father's ashes or anything like that. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 shrugs. Your book is just one of those weird slice-of-life things. My novel has a plot, 𝐬𝐸 insists, and it's probably going to have a major plot twist happen around this point. Now that the initial conflict has been resolved, there's going to be a major revelation. Or someone's going to do something that raises the stakes. It'll have to be someone unexpected to really elicit some strong emotion though. My bet's on 𝐸𝐸. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 snorts. I wouldn't be able to hide anything like that. He's an open book. Right? 𝐬𝐸 drawls, gazing doubtfully at 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬. That's why you two are on such good terms right now, because you know exactly how he feels about you. It's more complicated than that. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 protests. 𝐬𝐸 grins. But now that you brought it up, I didn't. Why are you avoiding him? 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 glares at him. I am not avoiding him. And briefly, 𝐬𝐸 wonders if 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 even believes his lies. But there's no time to focus on that now. Instead, he raises an eyebrow. So that's why you chose to spend the day with a person that you hate, packed into a crowded exhibition hall with a bunch of strangers, rather than explore a new city with your 2 closest friends. That totally makes sense. Katsuki rolls his eyes, shaking his head. But he doesn't respond, and it's all that Izuku needs to know he's right. Izuku presses on, deciding it's time to try breaching a risky topic once again. You always avoid the things you don't want to deal with, just like you avoided the question when I asked why you hate me. I don't hate you, okay. Katsuki rakes a hand through his hair, sighing. You're right, I do avoid things. But it's not because I don't want to deal with them. It's because I don't know how to deal with them. I know how I treated you was unfair and just wrong, but I don't know how to fix it. So it's easier to just pretend things haven't changed. It's easier to not deal with it. Izuku uses his straw to stir his frozen lemonade, stealing his nerves before he finally asks the question, the one that's weighed on his mind for almost half of his life. Why did you treat me like that? Did I do something to you? Katsuki shakes his head. No, you were fine. Too fine, always too fucking fine. And it drove me insane. He leans back in his chair. I mean, your dad up and left you, yet you just dealt with it. It was like it barely even fazed you. And I couldn't stand it. Not when I was always struggling so fucking hard with all my shit, and it wasn't nearly as bad as yours. Izuku frowns. It's not a competition, but it was. Whether you realized it or not, it was a competition. Katsuki huffs a humorless laugh, shaking his head. And I couldn't win in any way that mattered, so I had to do everything I could to make you lose. It was stupid and fucked up, and I get that now, but back then, I was jealous, and I let it get the best of me. It's Izuku's turn to laugh now. He chuckles, grinning as he shakes his head in disbelief. You know, for such a smart guy, you really are an idiot sometimes. What? You thought I dealt well when my dad left? It killed me, Kaken. I was a mess for years, and if it weren't for my mom, and 𝐻𝐸𝐻, and 𝐻𝐸𝐬. He trails off, shaking his head. I don't know what I would have done. Izuku pauses, fiddling with his straw. I wanted to rely on you too, you know, he says eventually, suddenly finding it difficult to meet the other's gaze. I think that was the hardest part. Not having my best friend to back me up. I needed you back then, but you weren't there for me. Then why did you stick around? Katsuki asks, voice quiet and unsure. Why did you keep trying to be friends with me? Why do you still keep trying after everything I've done to you? Izuku shrugs. I guess a part of me kind of understood why you'd treat me so badly. I mean, if my own father couldn't even be bothered to stick around, then why should you? Katsuki frowns. Deku, I know. Izuku cuts him off, waving his hands in dismissal. He sighs. But I also thought that, maybe if I just endured it, I could prove to you that I was worth keeping around. I had just lost my dad, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing my best friend too, of really losing you. But you lost me anyway, Katsuki points out dryly, cause I couldn't figure my shit out. Izuku hums in consideration. No, I don't see it that way. I mean, you're here with me now, aren't you? He shrugs a shoulder. Doesn't seem very lost to me. Katsuki rolls his eyes. This is different. I mean, it's not like I'm here for you. So you admit that you're avoiding 𝐼𝐸, then? Izuku says, a smug grin making its way onto his lips. What? No. Katsuki glares at the other boy in disgust. I already said before we left, I'm here to make sure your ass doesn't wind up dead in a dumpster somewhere. Izuku's smirk only intensifies. So you are here for me. Katsuki smacks his palms against the tabletop. No, stop twisting my words. I'm not twisting them. I'm just… Izuku waves his hand in the air, searching for the right words, revealing the hidden truths embedded deep within them. Katsuki snorts, shaking his head as he uncaps his water bottle. Well, you're way off anyway, he says, taking a quick swig of water. Izuku waits for him to explain, gazing at the other expectantly. Katsuki squints back. What? It's just, usually with that sort of a setup, you'd elaborate on your point, but it's fine if you don't, really. I'm not trying to pressure you or anything. It's just a little weird that you'd… Oh my god, Katsuki interrupts, throwing his bottle cap at Izuku. Stop rambling and maybe I'll tell you. Izuku presses his lips together, waiting. Katsuki sighs. Look, the day before we left, I ran into your mom, and she asked me to look out for you. That's it? Okay. Don't read into it. Izuku hums. Too late, I'm reading into it. Every sentence, every word, cover to cover, I'm reading it. Oh my god, Katsuki groans, dragging his palms down his face. I hate you so fucking much. But you don't. Izuku sings songs, shoulders wiggling in something that might resemble a dance if the viewer were being generous in the admission. You admitted it before, you don't hate me. And the fact that you're here because of my mom just proves it further. Your mom's terrifying when she's angry, Katsuki claims in defense, especially now that she's pregnant and has all those motherly hormones circulating her brain. I'm not stupid enough to mess with her. MMHMM. Izuku sips frozen lemonade through his straw, still shimmying his shoulders. Would you stop that? People are staring. Katsuki demands, reaching across the table to smack Izuku in the shoulder, the latter yelping in pain. Okay, I'll stop. Izuku concedes, raising his hands in defense. Just don't hit me again. No promises, Katsuki says with a shrug. Look, Izuku says, circling the conversation back. The point is that I don't think nearly as bad of you as you seem to. I mean, when I think of all the best parts of my childhood, you're there. And, I don't know. Izuku shrugs, idly twirling his straw between his fingers. I feel like, if we forget about that, we're giving up on ourselves. Maybe not, Katsuki says, voice quieter, more subdued than usual. It's his thinking voice, the one he uses when he's trying to talk something out with himself. Izuku's mother used to say it's the voice he uses when his thoughts become too big for his head, when he has no choice but to puzzle them out aloud. Maybe it's more like we're moving on, letting go. I mean, maybe it's better to walk away sometimes rather than to keep dragging things out. That way you don't risk ruining something that was good. Like how Community should have ended after Season 3. Izuku offers, and Katsuki squints at him a moment before nodding. Yeah, actually it's exactly like that. But with real people, Katsuki assents. He pauses, taking a deep breath as he cards a hand through his hair. I don't know. I just wonder, maybe there are some people who just aren't meant to stay friends, or stay in each other's lives, and maybe we owe it to ourselves and each other to let go. And it occurs to Izuku then that Katsuki has been turning this over in his mind for quite some time, long before the road trip ever began. It's easy to forget how contemplative the other boy is, his careful, reflective nature often masked by his outward temper. Maybe Izuku was being unfair in his assertion that Katsuki wasn't affected by their relationship shift. Maybe it had been weighing on him for just as long as it had on Izuku. Katsuki continues, words coming out in almost a rush now that he's allowed himself to speak. And it's not that you don't want to be together. It's not that you don't care. It's just that staying means constantly compromising on what you want and what you need. And it gets to you eventually, having to live like that. And there comes a point when you can't just sit back and take it. And then you find yourselves arguing all the time. And then the arguing turns to fighting, and before you know it you've ruined something great. Ruined someone great. And he cuts himself off, smacking his hands on the table in frustration as he grits his teeth, breathing ragged. And, okay, maybe Izuku missed something somewhere. The conversation no longer taking a direction that he can easily follow. Are we still talking about us? He asks hesitantly, setting aside his now empty cup. Cause it kind of feels like you're referring more to you and 𝐸. My parents are getting a divorce, Katsuki blurts, cutting Izuku off mid-sentence. They're getting divorced, he says again, leaning back in his chair, and I don't know how I should feel about it. Divorced, Izuku repeats, frowning. The conversation he overheard last night makes a lot more sense now. But still, I always thought your family was perfect. Katsuki scoffs, shaking his head as a wry grin settles on his lips. Perfect? We haven't been perfect for a long time. Katsuki leans forward again, elbows resting against the tabletop. He looks like he's about to say something else, jaw working as he searches for the words, or maybe as he struggles with himself to even speak. Izuku sits patiently, watching a group of cosplayers pass by as he waits. I think, Katsuki says, drawing Izuku's attention back to him, I think I was the only thing keeping them together. They didn't want to risk hurting me by splitting up, so they just stayed together until I graduated. But he pauses, sighing. I don't know. I just can't help but think they did more harm than good, sticking it out. I mean, for a while I figured that if I was just good enough, I could fix everything. I could make them love each other again, could keep everyone together. But that's a lot of pressure for one kid. And I just think that maybe we all would have been better off in the long run if they hadn't dragged things out, if they had just gotten it over with. Maybe then I wouldn't be so ... He trails off, rubbing at his eyes as he sighs. Fuck, I don't know. Shaking his head, he chuckles humorlessly. You know, when you're consistently making the top grades in your class, no one seems to care if you're struggling elsewhere. They forget that even the smartest kids can be pretty stupid. Izuku snorts, trying to hold back the smile threatening his lips, not willing to ruin this rare moment of vulnerability between him and Katsuki. He tries to disguise his laughter with a cough. Katsuki raises a brow at him. Okay, so maybe he wasn't as smooth as he thought. You were saying, Izuku prompts, trying to act nonchalant. Katsuki rolls his eyes. You're not slick, Deku. I know you're trying to keep me monologuing about my feelings and shit. I wasn't. Izuku insists. I was just letting you talk things out, get some things off your chest. You know. Well, I'm done now, so let's drop it. Katsuki's eyes drift shut, and he rubs soothing circles into his temples. This emotional shit's exhausting. Yeah, it can be, Izuku concedes with a laugh. But it's revitalizing too. Yeah, right. Katsuki stretches his arms above his head with a groan. Can we leave yet? I'm sick of being surrounded by all of these losers. Izuku rolls his eyes. Yeah, I'm ready to leave too. But hey, he adds as Katsuki rises to his feet, just because things didn't go well with your parents' relationship doesn't mean that all of your relationships are doomed to fail. You know that, right? Katsuki doesn't reply, eyes fixed somewhere on the horizon, away from Izuku. Izuku sighs. Look, if you really don't think we can salvage anything with our friendship, then okay. I won't force you to keep hanging on to something that's only going to hurt you in the end. But Kaken, don't give up on the others. Sure, things could be bad, but they could also be so good. And it's worth risking the bad for the good. And it's kind of like Toshinori said, we can't let our fears of the past repeating keep us from our futures. He didn't say that, Katsuki points out. Izuku shrugs. I'm paraphrasing, but the point still stands. Yeah, well, Katsuki shakes his head, still avoiding Izuku's gaze. Are you done yet? Almost. Izuku rises from his chair, collecting his empty cup. Friendships are really important to me. And I need you to know that I really miss our friendship. I really miss being able to just talk with you like this. And I'm not ready to give up on this just yet. But if you're really done with it, if you're really ready to move on, then that's fine. I just need to know. Katsuki sighs, finally dragging his eyes over to meet Izuku's gaze. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. But despite his words, Izuku can't help but feel as though the decision's been made. It's okay, he says, despite the heaviness settling deep in his core. You don't have to figure it out now. He shrugs, feigning indifference as though it would help quell the heat building behind his eyes. I needed you to know. Don't, Katsuki warns, shoulders slumping. Don't start crying. If you start, then I'll start. And then I'll have to kick your ass for making me cry in public. And I'm much too mentally exhausted for that. I'm not gonna cry, Izuku says, quickly shifting his glasses and rubbing at his eyes to cover his lie. Katsuki grumbles something under his breath that Izuku doesn't catch. Then a slight weight lands on his shoulder, and Izuku opens his eyes to find a hand settled there. He follows the hand to the arm, all the way up until he's meeting Katsuki's gaze once again. The other boy is obviously uncomfortable, making a face like he's constipated, but with emotion rather than, well, the physical excretory equivalent of human emotion. Look, Katsuki grinds out, hand squeezing Izuku's shoulder almost painfully, though it doesn't appear to be on purpose. I didn't say I never wanted to be friends again. I've got a lot to figure out, okay? And before I do, he trails off, taking a deep breath. I just don't want to risk screwing up again. And, okay, how is Izuku not supposed to cry after that admission? The tears finally spill over, tracking down his cheeks despite his valiant efforts to hold them back. He presses his lips in a firm line, removing his glasses with a sniffle and rubbing at his eyes as though it would be of any help. Goddammit, Katsuki curses, shoving Izuku by the shoulder. I told you not to cry. Izuku can't make out Katsuki's expression through the haze of tears blurring his vision, but he can imagine the other's glare quite vividly. I'm sorry, Izuku apologizes, voice thick with emotion. I tried, I swear. Well, just cut it out. Katsuki turns away. But if Izuku isn't mistaken, he's rubbing at his eyes as he does so. Katsuki mumbles a curse under his breath. I'm sorry, Izuku repeats, apology punctuated with another sniffle. I can't stop crying, I'm sorry. Katsuki cuts himself off, or maybe his voice breaks. He sighs. Come on, let's get out of here, before people really start staring. And despite the tears still streaming freely down his face, Izuku can't help but smile. They pull up to the hotel a while later, tears abated and the smell of takeout wafting temptingly from the backseat. Izuku managed to keep up a steady stream of conversation. And although Katsuki only contributed short replies every now and then, Izuku knows he's still listening. It's nice to see the other boy trying to mend things. It makes Izuku recall all those past conversations at Corner Convenience. All of his extended ramblings that he figured Katsuki never paid any mind to. Maybe he had been listening then too. Maybe he's been trying all along. I mean, it's all downhill after the third season. Izuku is saying as Katsuki shifts the car into park, swiftly killing the engine. They should have just ended it there. Or maybe after season 4, since it had some good points too. I don't know. If I were one of the writers, I would have just taken all the major points from seasons 4 to 6 and combined them into one epic season, finish off with a bang, you know. I guess, Katsuki concedes with a shrug, both boys climbing out of the car. But they wouldn't have reached all those major points without all the shitty stuff. Izuku rolls his eyes. Yeah, but still. They grab the takeout from the backseat before making their way into the hotel, following the obnoxiously patterned carpet down the hallway to their room. Izuku continues, all I'm saying is, Community should have ended after season 3, season 4, if I'm being generous. But they were too dedicated to that 6 seasons and a movie joke that they sacrificed artful storytelling. They pause in front of the door to their room, Izuku taking one of the bags from Katsuki so the latter can fish the keycard from his pocket. And I'm not mad about it. I'm just disappointed. Katsuki snorts. Apparently, Katsuki pushes open the door, stepping inside with Izuku on his heels. Izuku is about to continue, but Aijuru cuts him off, the other boy jumping up from where he had been seated on the edge of the bed to rush towards them. You're back. Thank God. I don't know what to do. He was here. I can't. 𝐬𝐬's words come out in a rush, the redhead's face creased with worry, and not for the first time is Izuku completely unsure of how to proceed. Luckily, Katsuki seems better prepared to deal with a nearly hysterical 𝐬𝐬, planting his hands firmly on the other's shoulders. Hey, just breathe, okay? 𝐬𝐬 nods, working to steady his ragged breathing. Izuku makes his way into the room, setting the bags of takeout on the table before all but collapsing onto the bed. His stomach rumbles, but he ignores it. There are much more important things to worry about, instead surveying the room while Katsuki continues to calm 𝐬𝐬 down. Everything looks the same as how they had left it, save for the beds having been made, but there's something else off about it as well. It feels too empty. Wait. Izuku bolts upright, glasses nearly tumbling from his face as he whips his head around frantically. Where's okay, good, Katsuki is saying, releasing his grip on 𝐬𝐬. Now talk. What's going on? Who was here? And where is Denki? He was here, 𝐬𝐬 says, running a hand through his hair. And then he said he was going for a walk. And then, 𝐬𝐬, breathe, Katsuki instructs. Where is Denki? 𝐬𝐬's voice breaks, and he shakes his head, averting his gaze as he takes a steadying breath. He's gone. Denki likes to think he's a pretty laid-back guy. He doesn't cause trouble, doesn't take things too seriously, is always ready to defuse a situation when necessary. He's a mediator, or maybe more of the amiable court jester type, keeping spirits high even at the cost of his own dignity. And it's fine, it really is. Have you spoken to your brother recently? His mom had asked, back to Denki as she leaned over the sink, scrubbing distractedly at a pot. Graying hair escaped her braid, in need of a good brush, if she could find the time, the energy for it. Denki's back was pressed against the edge of the counter, hands gripping the beveled edges tightening as he shrugs. No, not really. Not about anything important, at least. It's getting bad again. Relapse, they call it. She rinsed the pot, placing it in the drying rack before wiping her hands on a tea towel. That sucks. He pressed his back harder against the counter's edge to distract himself. His mother hummed, placing the towel aside before turning towards him, face creased with worry, dark circles marring her beautiful skin. She didn't look her age. She looked far older, the strains of a tiresome life maturing her much too quickly. Hey, did I tell you what happened at practice last night? He asked. At the shake of her head, Denki had launched into an animated recollection of dull skates, flaked shots, and mindless teenage boy antics. And sure, the story had been embarrassing as hell, one that he would refuse happening whenever one of the other guys brought it up in the locker room. But it was worth it to put a smile back on his mom's face. God, was it worth it? He enjoys his role, enjoys making people laugh, making people happy. He's always put on a show for his friends and family, singing and dancing and making dumb jokes to coax a smile in even the most trying of times. They rely on him, on his ability to stay positive regardless of the situation, to lift their spirits and keep them from spiraling down. He's their rock. He's their light. I think I'm gonna stay close to home, he told his family at the dinner table one night. One of the rare occasions they all actually sat down to have a meal together. His grandparents were in the city, and for once his dad had been able to get an evening off from work. The program here is just as good as anywhere else, so it makes sense. You just don't want to have to pay rent, his dad grumbled, and Denki wasn't sure if it was meant as a joke. Still, he took it in stride, winking obnoxiously. You know it. His grandma sat next to him, and at his admission she reached over to grip his shoulder, squeezing affectionately. You are doing a good thing, she told him, eyes alight with pride. I believe this is God's plan for you, staying close, being here to support your brother. You are doing a good thing. Denki didn't know how to respond, couldn't let the truth slip past his teeth that the other universities he had applied to had rejected him. Instead, he smiled back at her, not really a smile, more like a grimace, and just nodded in acknowledgement. He knew her words were meant to be encouraging, but that didn't stop the weight from settling deep in his stomach and spoiling his appetite, nor the thought ringing out in his mind, but who's going to support me? Denki knows he's getting lazier with age. And it's not that he doesn't want to do anything, it's just that sometimes he really can't bring himself to move, to act. He laughs about his laziness whenever he sees 𝐬𝐬 headed off to the gym or to football practice, but often refuses the others' invitations to join him for a quick workout. On the rare instance that he does go, he doesn't do a whole lot, mostly sits on the bench with a dumbbell in hand, watching as 𝐬𝐬 effortlessly squats almost twice his weight. And in those moments, he wonders what it would be like to be strong like that, to be able to carry the weight of more than just your body. He never asks, of course, 𝐬𝐬 wouldn't get it. He'd just shrug and give some sort of non-answer, like he's never really noticed his strength, or that Denki could experience it too if he dedicated himself to a solid workout and meal plan, and like that's gonna happen. He's tired, he's lazy, he's bored, but he can't figure out a way to quell his boredom. His old interests don't seem to hold his interest anymore. Maybe he could try branching out, try something new. But he's tired. God, he's so tired. His former teammates invite him to join their rec hockey team, and hesitantly Denki accepts. He always loved hockey. It was his life for a while. Maybe it was what he needed to ignite something within his soul, to get him back to the way he used to be. But he had lost his passion for the sport sometime last year, when his teammates seemed to care more for the after-party than the game. It was telling that even Katsuki, as stubborn a competitor as he is, hadn't bothered trying to right their behaviors. It was a battle none would win. Denki had tried to forgive their lack of discipline. They were all just there to have fun, after all. But when the bus ride to an important provincial game consisted of nothing but talks of how wasted they were going to get on the bus ride back, Denki had given up. It's not like he could really blame his teammates for their behavior. Not when a few of the accompanying parents had spent the ride up getting trashed as well. He attended a few of the rec games, tried to find joy in the sport he once loved. But soon he was skipping games. Soon he stopped going. It wasn't fun for him. It hadn't been fun for a while. I mean, when's the last time we went on a good road trip? 𝐲𝐬 asked one day. He, Katsuki, and Denki all squished onto the single love seat in Katsuki's quaint apartment, eyes plastered to the TV, the only nice thing Katsuki owned, as they watched some random action movie. The Lethbridge trip, Katsuki said, repositioning himself on the couch to lean more against 𝐲𝐬's shoulder, digging a sharp heel into Denki's thigh in the process. Denki's yelp of pain went unnoticed. Or maybe Katsuki really didn't care. He'd always been more of 𝐲𝐬's friend than Denki's. I said a good road trip, 𝐲𝐬 pointed out, dropping his shoulder to make Katsuki more comfortable, in the process letting his arm fall from the back of the love seat to drape across the other boy. And while Denki may be dumb, he wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what was going on between his friends, had seen the long looks, the lingering touches, the way they always seemed to gravitate towards each other. He knew there was something not quite platonic budding there, even if they themselves had not noticed. They never brought it up, at least. And Denki, being the good friend that he is, didn't bring it up either. It was none of his business. But still, it's hard being the unintentional third wheel. Hard to know that your friends are more friends with each other than with you. Especially on those nights, in those moments, where the two seem to become so wrapped up in themselves, within their own little world, that Denki can't help but wonder, would they notice if he left? If he disappeared for a little while? Would they realize that he's gone? Would they wait for him to return? Or would they go after him, track him down, make sure he's alive and safe and okay? He likes to think that they would. But on nights like these, as he's slowly displaced from the couch by Katsuki sprawling out against 𝐲𝐬, outcast to the unforgiving floorboards beneath, he has his doubts. He sits in one of the university's auditoriums, class wrapping up around him, but he's rooted to his chair. His laptop sits open on the desk before him, course website pulled up, gradebook on display. 47%. Another failed assignment. Another botched attempt at making himself into something not quite so pitiable, perhaps even something worthy of admiration. Yet here he is, sitting alone in a rapidly clearing auditorium, a number mocking his valiant attempts at success. Fuck, why does he even try? He can't do this anymore, so he won't. Yeah, so we're heading down to Nevada in a few days. It'll be fun, bro trip with the guys, Denki says over dinner one night. It's just him, his mom, and his grandmother. His dad putting in late hours at the shop, so they've foregone the table to eat their meals in the comfort of the living room, the TV quietly playing reruns of some sitcom in the background. It sounds like a waste of money, his grandmother says, and Denki's shoulders tense. It's fine, his mother replies. He won't get himself into any trouble. My boy is too smart for that. His grandmother hums but sounds doubtful. Well, she says after a pause, he better keep his grades up. We worked hard to get him into that school, and I won't see that hard work go to waste. But Denki doesn't have to worry about that anymore. He gets his golden opportunity soon enough. 𝐲𝐬's in the shower, belting along to some old rock song. Denki knows the redhead won't be able to hear him, yet he still finds himself creeping through their hotel room, almost as though he didn't belong there, like he was a stranger catching a glimpse into the life of someone else. He quickly gathers his things, shoving them into his duffel bag as the shower shuts off, his window of opportunity closing. He zips the bag, tossing it over his shoulder as he makes his way to the door. Hey, he calls through the bathroom door. I'm going for a walk. Want some company? 𝐲𝐬 calls back. Nah, but thanks though. Denki slips his shoes on, readjusting his bag as he stands once again. All right man, I'll see you later then. Be safe. But Denki barely catches the last part of the sentence, his feet already carrying him out the door, down obnoxiously carpeted hallways, out into stifling heat and the blinding Nevada sun. And before he knows it, he's gone, on his way to a place where nobody knows his name. A place where Denki Kaminari will cease to exist. Gone, Katsuki repeats slowly, eyes narrowing at 𝐲𝐬. What do you mean gone? I mean he's gone, 𝐲𝐬 replies unhelpfully. Missing, absent, AWOL, not here. Other synonyms. 𝐲𝐬 shakes his head, running a hand through his hair. I don't know how else to say it. He's gone. Izuku hovers around the edge of the room, heart racing as concern for Denki settles in. He wants to help, wants to stake out the city, comb every inch of it until they find the missing boy, but he doesn't know where to start, how to proceed. It's not like he's ever been in this situation before, had never even considered the possibility of such an event occurring. Honestly, it was like something out of a novel or a movie, not reality. Wait, that's it. He makes his way around the perimeter of the hotel room, eyes scanning his surroundings. 𝐬𝐸 𝐍𝐸 may not know what to do, but an archetypal fictional hero like 𝐬𝐻 would. Think, 𝐬𝐸. What would 𝐬𝐻 do? Assess the situation. Gather information. Clues. He must have left clues. I know he's gone. 𝐀𝐦 is saying, teeth gritted. That's not what I meant, but it's what you literally asked. 𝐻𝐸 fires back, voice rising. 𝐀𝐦 scoffs. No, don't you dare give me an attitude. You're the one who couldn't keep track of one single human adult person. 𝐬𝐸 pauses his search momentarily, crinkling his nose at 𝐀𝐦. Those were a lot of unnecessary words. 𝐀𝐦 just flips him off, not sparing him even a glance. Well, sorry, I don't feel the need to constantly babysit my friends. 𝐻𝐸 bites back. Oh wait, I forgot, he adds, planting his hands on his hips. You're too cool to be friends with 𝐬𝐸. Actually, we are friends now, 𝐬𝐸 chimes in again. 𝐻𝐸 whips his head around towards 𝐬𝐸. Really? At 𝐬𝐸's affirmative nod, 𝐻𝐸 grins. Congrats, man. 𝐬𝐸 returns the grin. Thanks. He returns to his search. 𝐀𝐦 heaves a deep breath through his nose, closing his eyes as he attempts to rein in his temper. Look, I don't want to argue over this. Just, we need to stay calm and think, okay, it's probably not a big deal, and we're just stressing over nothing. 𝐻𝐸 rolls his eyes. Yeah, I thought so too, about an hour ago, before I realized that one of my best friends is missing. 𝐻𝐸. 𝐀𝐦 reaches out to grip the redhead by the shoulders. 𝐻𝐸 jerks, hands wrapping around 𝐀𝐦's forearms as though to push the other boy away. But 𝐀𝐦 doesn't relent. His voice drops, 𝐬𝐸 barely able to make out the words. Please, take a breath. 𝐻𝐸 does, but it's shaky and shallow. The tension leaves his shoulders nonetheless, hands releasing their hold and falling back to his sides as his head droops forward. And for a moment it almost looks as though he were about to lean against the other boy in some form of bastardized embrace. But then he's pulling away, turning his back to his friend, and 𝐀𝐦 lets him go, something like hurt flashing in his crimson eyes. 𝐬𝐸 pretends he doesn't see it. Fuck, 𝐻𝐸 breathes out, shaking his head. I'm sorry, he flops back against one of the beds, limbs sprawling out around him. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Okay, let's just… 𝐀𝐦's voice breaks and he pauses, jaw clenching as he swallows. Let's start from the beginning. What happened before Denki left? 𝐻𝐸 presses the heels of his palms into his eyes, taking a deep breath. I don't know. We had just gotten back and were chilling, and then he said he was gonna go for a walk. But he never came back, and he hasn't answered any of my texts, but I can't call him, and I can't find his location on Snap or anything. And now he's probably lost or hurt or kidnapped. He wasn't kidnapped, 𝐀𝐦 insists, cutting 𝐻𝐸 off. Lost maybe, but not kidnapped. The most likely option is that he just got distracted by something during his walk. And he'll be back anytime now. I don't know, 𝐬𝐸 chimes in, drawing the other's gazes to himself. It doesn't look like he was planning on coming back. 𝐀𝐦's eyes narrow. And what makes you say that? 𝐬𝐸 gestures at the room around them. His stuff's gone. Well, most of it at least. It looks like he was in a hurry when he left. 𝐀𝐦 whirls on 𝐻𝐸. Wait, did you actually see Denki leave? 𝐻𝐸 sits up slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, technically no. I was in the bathroom when he left. 𝐀𝐦 rolls his eyes, huffing in exasperation. But how was I supposed to know he was planning on running away? People don't just randomly decide to run away. 𝐻𝐸. 𝐀𝐦 shouts, turning on the redhead once again. There must have been a warning sign or something. 𝐻𝐸 rolls his eyes. Well, now that I think about it, Denki might have mentioned something like that. He clears his throat, poorly mimicking Denki in a higher pitch when he continues. Whoa, check out all those cool cactuses. Cacti. Cactuses. Whatever, I'm just gonna pack up all my stuff once we get back to the hotel and then run away, never to be seen again, just so you're aware. Hey, do you think I'll be able to bring a cactus home, like Bella did in Twilight? No wait, hers is from Arizona. Yeah, don't go looking for me once I run away. You won't find me. Anyways, can we hit a Chipotle now? I'm starving. 𝐀𝐦 throws his head back in exasperation. That's not what I meant. I don't know. 𝐻𝐸 shouts. He cradles his head in his hands. I don't know what was going through Denki's head all day. I don't know if he was acting any differently. I was too busy with my own shit that I didn't notice Denki was dealing with his own. And I'm sorry if that makes me a horrible, stupid, awful dumbass of a friend, but please just stop yelling at me. I'm literally on the verge of a mental breakdown and your yelling isn't helping. 𝐀𝐦 opens his mouth to reply but stops himself, jaw snapping shut to quell the undoubtedly abrasive retort forming on the tip of his tongue. He closes his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose as he works to steady his breathing. It's not exactly a productive response, but at least it isn't destructive anymore. Eventually, he sighs. Okay, I'm sorry. What happened before doesn't matter. We're here now, so we've got to deal with it. He opens his eyes, leveling his two companions with a determined gaze. Someone must have seen Denki leave. We'll ask around, get some more info, and go after him. 𝐲𝐬 nods, curling his hands into fists as he rises from the bed. Right, let's do this. If we get some good info, we should be able to catch up, Izuku adds, joining the two as they begin making their way towards the door of their hotel room. I'm sure he hasn't gotten too far yet. Why do you say that? 𝐲𝐬 asks, glancing at Izuku over his shoulder. Izuku raises a black leather square he had found during his perusal. He forgot his wallet. They check in with the front desk first, but have no luck finding out any useful information regarding Denki's whereabouts. Asking the other hotel guests is a bust too, with apparently no one having seen anyone of Denki's description leaving the hotel within the past hour or so. Distraught but not dissuaded, they take their search outside, hoping that by some miraculous feat they'd find the clue that would lead them to their missing friend. It's then that they spotted a white pickup truck, an all too familiar white pickup truck. The trio comes to an abrupt halt just outside of the hotel's doors. Is that? 𝐲𝐬 asks, question trailing off unfinished. It sure looks like it, Izuku confirms, no doubt in his mind as to what the object in question is. 𝐲𝐬 squints, brows furrowed in thought. Do you think? Now, Izuku has never really considered himself to be an outlandish conspirator in the way that Denki seems to be, but in this circumstance, he can't help but acknowledge the proposed theory. He levels the truck with a thoughtful look, head cocked slightly to the side. I mean, no, Katsuki cuts him off, tone insistent and more forceful when he repeats, no, there's no way. But 𝐲𝐬 starts, but the other boy won't hear it. No, Katsuki repeats. I refuse to believe that any part of Denki's crazy road trip hitman story could be true. 𝐲𝐬 whirls on him, hands planted firmly on his hips. So it's just a coincidence that we ended up at the same hotel as the dude in the sketchy white truck who's been tailing us since Minnesota. Katsuki snorts in derision. Okay, first of all, he hasn't been tailing us. Second, there's gotta be a rational explanation for all this. Yeah, 𝐲𝐬 challenges. And what would that be? Katsuki's about to reply, but Izuku beats him to it, a figure in the corner of his eye drawing his attention. Why don't we just ask him? He points across the parking lot, his companion's eyes following to a familiar grizzled man, sans rifle this time, fortunately. Look, he's right there. Perfect. Katsuki smirks, turning his gaze back to 𝐲𝐬. 𝐲𝐬, go ask. What? 𝐲𝐬 asks, glaring at Katsuki. Why me? Katsuki crosses his arms over his chest. You're the one who actually believes this batshit crazy kidnapping theory. That should make me the worst option for this. 𝐲𝐬 protests. Katsuki rolls his eyes. Fine, I'll do it then. The man's at his truck by now, pulling open one of the back doors and reaching inside. The trio braces, prepared for the worst, but when the supposed hitman only withdraws a simple gray suitcase, they allow their bodies to relax. Eyes on me, extras, Katsuki says, squaring his shoulders. Then he's stomping off across the parking lot towards the man. Hey, you white trash bastard, what the fuck? Whoa, what the hell, man? 𝐲𝐬 cuts him off, racing up and stopping the blonde's approach with an arm across his chest. Maybe I should handle this. Katsuki clicks his tongue but doesn't protest. Now it's 𝐲𝐬 who closes the gap between him and the man. The man's watching him approach, head cocked quizzically, hands planted on his hips. Hey, 𝐲𝐬 greets, rubbing the back of his neck abashedly. Sorry about my friend there. He's never actually learned how to interact with other human people, but we're working on it. Izuku can't help the snort that escapes his nose. Katsuki jabs him in the ribs with a sharp elbow. No need to apologize, the man says, sliding his hands into the front pockets of his jeans. I've heard worse from my bitch of an ex. 𝐲𝐬 chuckles nervously, arms crossing over his chest as he nods toward the truck. Anyways, cool truck you've got. The man snorts. She better be, considering she's all I'm getting out of the absolute shitshow my lawyer calls a divorce settlement. He shakes his head, adjusting the camo print bowl cap on his head before slapping a hand against the edge of the truck box, the movement both aggressive yet oddly affectionate. Yeah, got that 𝐀𝐦 turbocharged diesel engine, 6.7 liter, of course, 20-inch aluminum wheels, 2.5-inch lift, some sexy chrome stacks. I'm gonna get a bed liner in there soon, and I've got some sex lights on order. Everything my ex claimed was douchey and a waste of money. He scoffs, leaning against his truck with his arms crossed over his chest. Like she would know what's a waste of money. 𝐲𝐬 nods along as the man speaks. At the man's pause, 𝐲𝐬 replies, nice. I only understood some of those words, and of the ones I knew I wish I didn't, but... He trails off, shrugging. Anyway, I was actually we lost track of our buddy and we're hoping you might have seen him. He's about as tall as me, but super lanky and kind of awkward. He pauses, probably weighing his words carefully. He's got pretty unique blonde hair with a lightning bolt dyed into it. Probably had a duffel bag with him. 𝐻𝐸 stops and waits for a response from the man, but at his silence instead prompts, is any of this ringing a bell? The man hums, rubbing a hand across his stubbled jaw in thought. I don't know. Oh wait. He suddenly perks up. You're talking about that Chinese dude, aren't you? Before 𝐻𝐸 can respond, Katsuki's charging forward, inserting himself angrily into the man's space. He's Japanese, you racist bastard. He growls, and 𝐻𝐸's quick to drag him away by the back of his shirt, the display reminiscent of a dog owner attempting to control their vicious pet. The man doesn't seem particularly intimidated, however. You sound like my ex-wife. But before Katsuki can reply to that assessment, 𝐻𝐸 cuts in. Look, have you seen our friend or not? The man adjusts his hat again. I think so. The trio perks up at this, attention fixed on the man as he continues. He asked me where the closest bus stop was, and I told him I didn't know 'cause I'm from Minneapolis, but I offered to Google it for him and he accepted. And then I had to specify if he wanted like a city bus or if he was looking more for a Greyhound. And he said he wanted a Greyhound, so I found the station on maps and he thanked me and then was on his way. Do you still have the address for the station? 𝐻𝐸 asks, the question coming out in a hurried breath. I think I still have it on my phone, the man says, pulling said phone from the back pocket of his jeans. These things store all sorts of information. Probably knows more about you than you know yourself. He clicks through his phone, the trio almost vibrating with anticipation as they try not to crowd too closely around the stranger and his phone. Yup, right here, 280 North Center Street, Reno, Nevada. Did you get that, Kat? 𝐻𝐸 asks, throwing a glance at the other boy. Got it, Katsuki confirms, quickly typing the address into his phone. He tucks his phone away, turning to leave, and grabbing my car. As he leaves, 𝐻𝐸 turns back to the man. Thanks for all your help. You're a lifesaver. The man brushes him off, and as 𝐻𝐸 turns to leave, Izuku follows. 𝐻𝐸 calls back to the man over his shoulder, waving in farewell and good luck with your divorce. Katsuki's got the car started when Izuku and 𝐻𝐸 slip inside, 𝐻𝐸 taking the front and Izuku the back. As they rush to buckle their seatbelts, Katsuki finishes entering the address into the GPS, pressing the buttons aggressively as he mutters, Come on GPS, don't fail me now. Starting route to 280 North Center Street. The lilted robotic voice of the GPS rings out. All right. Katsuki shifts the car into gear, hands tightly gripping the wheel and eyes burning with determination. Let's do this. They may have been driving for minutes. They may have been driving for hours. Time passes differently when pressed upon by the weight of anxieties, lengthening and shortening the seconds like the nervous flexing of clenched jaws and stiff shoulders. Izuku shifts uncomfortably in his seat, eyes fixed on the scenery outside as it passes along, searching the sidewalks for a familiar face. He hardly breathes. It's 𝐻𝐸 that breaks the oppressive silence, lurching up in his seat. There he is. Quick, pull over. Katsuki complies immediately, barely taking a moment to slow the car down as he pulls it up along the curb, slamming it into park. 𝐻𝐸's out before the car is fully stopped, not bothering to even close his door as he jogs up the sidewalk after a very familiar figure. Denki. Katsuki and Izuku climb out of the car, the latter gently nudging the passenger door closed before following after 𝐻𝐸 at a much slower pace. Meanwhile, Denki's head whips around towards 𝐻𝐸, stopping in his tracks as 𝐻𝐸 quickly catches up, pulling the other boy into a quick embrace. Oh my god, thank God you're okay. Denki stands stock still in 𝐻𝐸's embrace, shoulders tense, gripping the strap of his duffel white knuckle tight as his brows furrow in confusion. What? But where? How did you? 𝐻𝐸 pulls back, giving Denki's shoulder a final squeeze before releasing him entirely. Huffing a laugh. It's a long story. Not really, Katsuki says, coming to stand next to 𝐻𝐸. He tucks his hands into the front pockets of his jeans, shrugging. I mean, we just asked around a bunch until your gas station gun guy pointed us in the right direction. It's so simple when put so plainly. And yet, Izuku cocks his head. You're right, but it really feels like it should have been a longer story. 𝐻𝐸 brushes them off. Whatever, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that Denki is here, and he's safe, and he's okay. Denki rolls his eyes. Yeah, okay. He adjusts the strap of his duffel on his shoulder before turning away. Great to see y'all, but now I gotta get going. Hey, wait a minute. 𝐻𝐸 protests. You can't just go. Yes, I can. Denki retorts, glancing back at them over his shoulder. And don't follow me this time. 𝐻𝐸 lunges forward, grabbing Denki by the arm before the other boy can leave. Denki, stop. Denki shouts, yanking his arm free of 𝐻𝐸's grasp. Let go of me. Come on, man. 𝐻𝐸 calls after him as Denki marches away again. Wait. No. Denki doesn't look back this time, gaze fixed forward resolutely. I have to do this. Do what? 𝐻𝐸 takes a step after him. Denks, what's going on? Denki stops, his back to them, but still he doesn't respond. 𝐻𝐸 approaches slowly. Come on, man. Please, talk to me. Denki's shoulders hunch, head tipped forward as he takes a deep, shaky breath. His voice breaks, a sob wrenching its way out of his throat, and it seems that's all it takes for the dam to break inside of him. His shoulders shake, and he curls further in on himself, a futile attempt to shield himself from the outside gaze. I can't. 𝐬𝐻 finally closes the distance between them, arms open wide. See me, man, he says, wrapping his arms around Denki and pulling him in close to his chest, the latter surrendering to the embrace and twisting around to bury his tear-streaked face against 𝐬𝐻's shoulder. I got you. It's all right. I can't, Denki repeats, voice muffled. Can't what? 𝐬𝐻 asks softly, hand rubbing gentle circles into Denki's back. Go home. 𝐬𝐻's eyes narrow in confusion, expression mirrored by those of Izuku and Katsuki. Go home, he asks, releasing a breathless laugh. Denki, man, what are you talking about? Of course you can go home. I know Kat is an asshole, but he wouldn't just leave you stranded in a foreign country. Katsuki shoots 𝐬𝐻 a glare, but the look goes unnoticed as Denki pushes himself out of 𝐬𝐻's arms, fixing the redhead with a watery glare of his own. That's not what I mean. Don't try to make a joke out of this. I'm not. I swear I'm not. 𝐬𝐻 shakes his head, hands gripping Denki's shoulders as though he might disappear again without the contact. Help me understand. Please. Denki's jaw works, flexing as though physically chewing on his words. I messed up, he says eventually, eyes narrowed and fixed somewhere over 𝐬𝐻's shoulder. Back home, he trails off, shaking his head. Everyone thinks I'm strong, and that I'm resilient, and that I'm gonna make something of myself. But I've got no idea what I'm doing. Not one fucking clue. And yeah, I've been pretending that everything is fine, that I've got it all under control, but I swear to God I'm always just one minor inconvenience away from a complete mental breakdown. His voice breaks, and he takes a gulping breath. So I'm leaving, 'cause if I stick around, bad things are gonna happen, and I won't be strong enough to pick myself up again. 𝐬𝐻's face creases with worry. Come on, man, don't talk like that. You're plenty strong. Denki scoffs at this, shaking his head as he drags a hand across tear-streaked cheeks. 𝐬𝐻's gaze shifts to Katsuki, brows raised as he silently mouths, help me. Katsuki narrows his eyes and shakes his head. And from that point on, Izuku is lost, an entire conversation passing between the former two through nothing more than the subtle shifting of expressions until finally Katsuki sighs, defeated. Katsuki stuffs his hands into his front pockets, eyes fixed on the ground as he scuffs the pavement with the toe of his sneaker. What's your plan then? He asks, voice gruff as he attempts to steer the conversation elsewhere. If you're not heading home with us, where are you going? Anywhere. Everywhere. God, I don't know. Denki snorts humorlessly, shaking his head. If I could just start over, somewhere no one knows me, or has any preconceived ideas about who or what I should be, I think I'd be fine. I could start fresh, make something of myself. But I can't do that if I stay. There's nothing left for me back home. This catches 𝐬𝐻's attention, and the worry that once creased his features is replaced by a wave of sudden anger. Nothing, he repeats, giving Denki a firm shove backwards. What about us? What about your family? Do you really care that little about us that you would just run away? I'm not running away. Denki shouts back, hands balled into fists at his sides. Then what do you call this? 𝐬𝐻 challenges, gesturing vaguely at the other boy. Denki shakes his head. I don't know, okay. He buries his head in his hands, and when he speaks again, he sounds utterly defeated, voice small and wavering. I've got no fucking idea what I'm doing. Denki, 𝐬𝐻 deflates, shoulders slumping as he sighs. Look, man, running from this won't solve anything. But what if it will? It won't, okay. 𝐬𝐻 insists, voice firm, and for the briefest of moments, Izuku catches the way 𝐬𝐻's eyes drift to Katsuki before falling back to Denki. It might alleviate the issue, but it won't make it go away. It'll just make things worse. Worse, Denki echoes, shaking his head. It couldn't possibly get any worse. 𝐬𝐻's mouth opens, protest undoubtedly forming on his tongue. But before he can speak, Denki goes on. I dropped out of university. Did you know that? I dropped out 'cause it was too much for me. And I didn't even know why I was there in the first place other than to make my parents proud. And now here I am, disappointing them anyways. If you think your academic success is the only thing that can determine your worth, Katsuki says, gaze shifting from the pavement to fix Denki with a glare. You're a bigger idiot than I thought. So you agree? Denki surmises, I'm a failure and an idiot. That's not what I meant. Katsuki runs a hand through his hair, eyes closed as he takes a deep breath. Look, he begins, returning his gaze to Denki. I don't call you all those names because you suck. I call you those names because I suck. I never thought you took them seriously, so that's on me. He trails off, shaking his head as he averts his gaze back to the pavement. I'm bad at friends, okay, everyone knows it, but I'm trying to figure it out. And someday I will, just like someday you'll figure out your shit too. He meets Denki's eyes again, unwavering. No matter what anyone else says, you've got time. You don't have to know everything already. I mean, nobody our age does. Anyone who says they do is either lying or delusional. It's okay to feel lost. It's completely normal, which is not to minimize you in any way. He adds as almost an afterthought, it's just to say that you're not alone in this. All right, you've always got us, 𝐻𝐸 adds. No matter what happens, we'll always be here to support you. We promise. Izuku clears his throat then, drawing everyone's gazes to himself and probably reminding them that he is in fact still there. He shifts his eyes to the ground, suddenly nervous under everyone's attention. I know we weren't really friends before all this, but he swallows his nerves, lifting his gaze to meet Denki's. But I'd like to be friends. And I'll be here for you too, whatever you need. 𝐻𝐸 nods, clapping Denki affectionately on the shoulder. All you need to do is ask. Denki's eyes are wide, a fresh wave of tears tracking down his cheeks. I don't. Then his lips press into a shaky grin. And the tension that had lined his shoulders for so long finally releases as he bobs his head in a nod. Thank you. 𝐻𝐸 grins too, eyes shining with unshed tears as he pulls Denki against himself once again. Get back in here. And as Denki hooks his chin over 𝐻𝐸's shoulder, 𝐻𝐸 beckons towards the other two. Come on, you guys too. We need a group hug. Izuku shrugs a shoulder, approaching 𝐻𝐸 and Denki and allowing himself to be pulled into a hug, head squished between the chests of the two much taller boys. Katsuki refuses, however, arms crossed defiantly over his chest. Not a chance. Come on, Kaken, Denki says, a pout evident in his tone. Do it for me. Yeah, Kaken, 𝐻𝐸 adds. Do it for Denki. Katsuki groans. But soon there's another body joining the group hug, 𝐻𝐸 drawing them all tightly together despite Katsuki's struggles to stay as far away from that loser as possible. Damn it, don't make me hug him. 𝐻𝐸 sighs happily. We love you, Denki. Don't ever forget that. Denki's grip tightens, and he sniffles. Thank you. They keep the embrace for a moment. But when Katsuki finally frees himself, they all follow suit, detaching from each other and taking a small step back. All right, Katsuki says, dusting off his clothes as though to remove any lingering traces of loser on them. This has all been great, but can we get back to the hotel now? I'm starving and exhausted. And that is not a good combination. Yeah, Denki agrees, grinning as he adjusts the strap of his duffel bag. Let's head back. And I swear to God, Katsuki adds as they make their way towards his car, if I have to be involved in one more emotionally charged situation, I am going to fucking lose it. The takeout's gone cold by the time they make it back to the hotel room. It's really not surprising considering they'd been gone for a while. And it's a minor inconvenience at best, but it still grates on Katsuki's patience, already worn thin in his emotionally exhausted state. He sighs, shutting one of the cardboard containers and closing his eyes. Could this day get any worse? Don't be so dramatic, Denki tells him, as though he hadn't attempted to literally run away and start a new life in a foreign country just moments before, and Katsuki turns his head just enough to shoot a glare at the other boy. Denki's unaffected by the look. I'm hopping in the shower. Don't eat all the grub before I'm done. As Denki disappears into the bathroom, Izuku reaches over and gently slides the container from beneath Katsuki's fingertips. Let's just stick this in the microwave and warm it up again. Maybe then you'll feel better. Don't patronize me. Izuku rolls his eyes, but he seems more amused than anything else, the bastard. Still, he sets to work reheating their food, so Katsuki decides to leave him be. For now, at least. Hey, Katsuki feels a nudge against his shoulder, and he turns towards 𝐻𝐸. What? Can we talk? 𝐻𝐸 looks nervous, shifting from foot to foot and hands fidgety. Katsuki glances longingly at the cardboard container slowly rotating in the microwave. Can it wait? No. Katsuki's shoulders slump, exhaustion weighing down his limbs as he sighs. 𝐻𝐸, look. 𝐻𝐸 cuts him off, taking a step closer and dropping his voice slightly. I almost lost one friend today, and I'm not about to risk losing another one. Not if there's something I can do about it. You're not losing me. Katsuki begins to protest. But 𝐻𝐸 interrupts again. Let me be sure. 𝐻𝐸 holds Katsuki's gaze steady, red eyes staring pleadingly into red. Please. There's something in the redhead's tone that sends a sharp pain searing through Katsuki's heart, a desperation in his voice pressing upon the walls of his chest. He can't hold the other's gaze, shifting his eyes instead to the microwave, where Izuku continues his methodical reheating of the takeout, not so subtly pretending he's not listening to the present conversation. Katsuki chews over his next words, hands clenched into fists at his sides as he plans his next moves. But it's all in vain and he knows it. In a war against 𝐻𝐸, Katsuki couldn't win even if he wanted to. His decision was made long before this conversation ever took place. He sighs, shoving his hands into his pockets and making his way towards the door. Let's go. He doesn't check to see if 𝐻𝐸 follows after him. He doesn't need to. They make their way down the hotel hallway towards a door leading to the stairwell. It's quiet out here, relatively private despite the countless doors lining the walls. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 makes himself comfortable against an empty spot of the wall, leaning his back against its surface and stuffing his hands into his pockets in a vain attempt to feign serenity, as though the simple act could do anything to slow the racing of his heart. He takes a deep breath. "All right," he says, avoiding 𝐼𝐻𝐬's gaze by shifting his eyes up to the glowing red exit sign above, perhaps a warning, a final indicator that this were indeed his last chance to escape. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 steels his nerves against the urge. He wanted to talk, so talk. 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 pauses, and when 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 turns his gaze on the redhead, he finds the other rubbing at the back of his neck, scuffing the garish carpet underfoot with the toe of his shoe. "I honestly don't know how to start." 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 scoffs and rolls his eyes at this, and 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 just laughs, shrugging a shoulder before leaning against the wall opposite to 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬. "Yeah, sorry," 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 says, gaze averted. I knew a conversation needed to happen. And I knew it needed to happen sooner rather than later. He shrugs again. "I didn't really plan ahead this far." "Not surprising," 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 says, a smirk on his lips. "Foresight has never been your strong suit." He pauses, taking a steadying breath. "But you're right." 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬's head whips up at the admission, wide eyes gazing into 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's. "We did need to talk. And since you don't know what to say, let me speak, before I think too hard about this and lose my nerve." 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 waits, tension lining his shoulders as he watches 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 patiently, intently. It's a lot, having those crimson eyes so fixed on him, so he takes one more deep breath, swallowing past the lump in his throat and ignoring every instinct to flee, to run, to escape. He sets himself, hands balled into fists in his pockets and gaze fixed firmly on 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬's shoes. "I like you," he blurts, before the words can become caught on his tongue. "I'm sure I've made it quite clear by now, but I like you. Really like you. Some might even say that I love you, and by some, I mean me, because I did in fact say that." There's a snort from 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬. And emboldened, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 lifts his gaze to meet 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬's. The tension's gone from his posture, eyes shiny and a small grin plastered to his face. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 presses on, no longer averting his eyes. "Look, I need you to know that, whatever my feelings for you, above all you're my friend, my best friend. And I'm not letting you take that from me, okay? I love you, in every definition of the word, and there's nothing you can do about it." 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 cuts himself off with a huff of laughter, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know if I should feel flattered or threatened." 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 glares at him. "Are you serious? You're gonna make a joke of this?" He pushes himself off the wall, planting his hands firmly on his hips. "I just laid bare my fucking heart and all you can do is make a joke." He clicks his tongue, shaking his head as he turns and makes his way down the hallway, back towards their room. "Forget this. I'm never opening my heart to anyone ever again." "Cat, wait," 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 calls after him, but 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 doesn't stop. "I'm just using humor as a way of coping with uncomfortable feelings. I'll be serious now, okay? Just stop being dramatic and come back." "Dramatic?" 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 spits, whirling on his heel to face 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬 once again. "You think that I am being dramatic?" And it must be the way he can't keep the slight grin from his face that betrays him, the tension melting from 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬's shoulders when he registers the look. "Oh, I see now. You are also making a joke. You're not the only one who can use humor to cope, bitch." 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 smirks, pacing towards 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬 again. "I mean," he rakes a hand through his hair, "shit, you don't know how fucking scared I am right now. And oops, that part wasn't supposed to slip out. But it's out there now, and he can't take it back." So he grits his teeth, averting his gaze as he waits for a response, a reaction, anything, to come from 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬. 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬's voice is soft, like the pad of his cautious footsteps as he closes the distance between them. "Look at me." When 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬 refuses to meet his gaze, he tries again, "Please." Warm hands cradle the sides of his jaw, soft thumbs tracing gently across his cheekbones, and 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 hates how easy it is to melt into the touch, to lift his chin and meet 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬's gaze. So he narrows his eyes, as though if he could muster up enough anger or frustration it would somehow cancel out the fear. Still, 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 just smiles at him, red eyes shining with the beginnings of unshed tears. "Hey, there you are." And the way 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 says it should be patronizing, like an adult soothing a small child. But it really does do something to calm 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬's nerves. A shaky breath rattles out from deep within his lungs as he allows himself to relax further into the touch. "I'm sorry," 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 says, voice just above a whisper. "I never meant to make you so afraid." And when 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 opens his mouth to protest, 𝐻𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 just presses on. "But 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, I like you too. Really like you. Some might even say love." But his little attempt at humor fails to quell the surge of panic and confusion raging in 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬's mind. A storm of distress stemming from that one deceptively simple question plaguing 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬's thoughts. "Then why'd you run away?" 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 takes a deep breath. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 says, "Because," 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 starts, throat flexing as he swallows thickly. "Because I'm scared too. But not of you. Never of you." And the response does little to ease 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, his eyes narrowing and a new question burning on the tip of his tongue. But 𝐲𝐻's quick to explain, responding to that question before it can even be asked. I'm not afraid of how I feel about you. My feelings for you, they're new and exciting and make me feel like I'm walking on clouds and shit. They make me so happy. You make me happy. But Cat, my parents don't know I'm bi. And I'm scared of how they'll react when they find out. Pause. They will find out if we were to take this anywhere. I'd never be able to hide a relationship with you. I wouldn't want to. But my parents. 𝐲𝐻 trails off, shaking his head. I don't know. They'd get over it eventually. Katsuki tries to reassure him. I mean, they do love me after all. 𝐲𝐻 snorts at this, hands falling to rest on Katsuki's shoulders. Cat, my parents hate you. What? Sure, they're nice to your face. 𝐲𝐻 carries on, seeming amused by Katsuki's scandalized outburst. But behind your back, they're homophobic as fuck. Assholes, Katsuki mutters, eyes narrowed. I even baked them that chocolate zucchini cake for Christmas. Yeah, they threw it out, 𝐲𝐻 says with a wince. Katsuki scoffs, shaking his head. I don't believe this. But you get it, don't you? 𝐲𝐻 asks, circling back. You get why I'm afraid. I mean, I know that they're assholes, but they're still my family, and I know that they love me now, but if they found out, I don't. His voice breaks, the tears that had been brimming finally spilling over down his cheeks, chest heaving with a trembling breath. And never before had there been a moment where Katsuki wished more that he could be the air in someone else's lungs. That he could breathe for another when they couldn't find a breath within themselves. Maybe one day he'd figure that shit out. Figure out a way to occupy every last square inch of 𝐲𝐻's body the way he swears the redhead already occupies his. But for now it's all he can do to drag the weeping boy into an embrace. Arms wrapping firmly around 𝐲𝐻's waist as an anchor, grounding him. Or maybe something a little more protective and safe, like a seatbelt, but more romantic. 𝐲𝐻 curls into the embrace, hands fisting into the fabric at the back of Katsuki's shirt as he rests his forehead on Katsuki's shoulder, body trembling as he sucks a few calming breaths in through clenched teeth. He starts again, voice thick. I wish that I didn't care so much about what they thought of me, and that I could live my life and do whatever I want and be whoever I am. But I can't. I can't, Cat. I can't do it. I love you, but I love them too. They're my family, and I can't just give up on them. They're too important to me. But you're important to me too, and I don't know. 𝐲𝐻's hands tighten impossibly in the fabric of Katsuki's shirt, body strung up with tension until eventually his shoulders collapse, his full weight resting almost entirely on Katsuki. And when he speaks again, his voice is barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. Katsuki wants to say something, to whisper words of comfort into 𝐲𝐻's ear, make all his worries and doubts disappear with a quip from his clever tongue. But as it is, he's rendered speechless. He turns his head to bury his face in 𝐲𝐻's crimson locks, breathing him in to distract himself from the burning in his eyes and the tears tracking down his cheeks. 𝐲𝐻 holds him tighter in turn, sniffling slightly. Love isn't supposed to be this hard. And it's said so quietly. Katsuki almost doesn't catch the words, and had he been any further away, he knows he would have missed them entirely. But despite the fragility in 𝐲𝐻's voice, his words cut deep, the verbalization of shared feelings Katsuki had never been able to put into words. He swallows past the lump in his throat, smiling wryly though no one would see it. For people like us, it always is, he says, voice slightly strained. But that's what makes it so much stronger. Maybe. But 𝐲𝐻 doesn't really sound convinced. He heaves a heavy sigh against Katsuki's shoulder. I'm just so tired of being afraid of something that's supposed to be so good. Katsuki rubs soothing circles into 𝐲𝐻's back. I know, and I wish I knew how to just fix everything, make all that fear go away, but I don't. I mean, he snorts, shaking his head slightly. Most of the time I feel like I don't know a goddamn thing. And even 𝐲𝐻 laughs at this, a long-awaited glimpse of sun breaking through the darkness. Katsuki hooks his chin over 𝐲𝐻's shoulder, taking a deep breath. But I do know that I love you, and that I'd never make you choose between me and your family. 𝐲𝐻 pulls away at this, not too far, just enough to look Katsuki in eye, but the distance is far too vast for Katsuki's liking. He presses their foreheads together, noses bumping slightly, but eyes never breaking contact. I also know, he continues, hands searching for 𝐲𝐻's and tangling their fingers together, that we don't need to have this all figured out right away. We've got time. And it's like I said before. He squeezes 𝐲𝐻's hands tightly. Your friendship is more than enough for me. If you stay my friend for the rest of my life. He trails off, gaze flickering down to their joined hands for the barest of moments before returning to meet 𝐲𝐻's. He takes a deep breath, steady in his resolve. I couldn't ask for anything better than that. 𝐲𝐻's silent a moment, lips pressed into line in an attempt to quell their quivering, shallow breaths mingling with Katsuki's. He starts, voice strained and breathy. Then he's pulling Katsuki back into a crushing embrace. Thank you. You don't need to thank me, Katsuki protests, voice muffled by 𝐲𝐻's shoulder. He maneuvers his head free, pressing his cheek against the other's collarbone. Just keep being you. 𝐲𝐻 chuckles lightly. nuzzling his cheek against 𝐀𝐦 hair. "I think I can manage that," he says. "But only if you promise to keep being you." "Okay." 𝐀𝐦 makes to shove 𝐼𝐻𝐬 away. "Now you're asking way too much of me." "Oh, shut up." 𝐼𝐻𝐬 holds 𝐀𝐦 in place effortlessly. Not that 𝐀𝐦 had really been trying to escape, mind you. It was all for show, all a clever ploy to get 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to hold him just a little tighter. And 𝐼𝐻𝐬 plays right into it, sighing in contentment as they stand in their embrace, swaying idly in place. "I love you. Love you too," 𝐀𝐦 replies easily, naturally, as though it were all he was ever meant to do. And 𝐀𝐦 could have stayed there forever, eyes closed, mind still, wrapped in the arms of his love. But even he only has so much control over basic human necessity, and his feeble mortal body has other plans for him. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 snorts. "Did your stomach just growl?" "Yeah," 𝐀𝐦 grumbles, refusing to open his eyes. "'Cause my supper keeps getting delayed by you assholes wanting to talk about your feelings." 𝐼𝐻𝐬 just laughs, and this time 𝐀𝐦 really does shove him away. "Shut up." But 𝐼𝐻𝐬, unsurprisingly, does not shut up, his laughter only exacerbated by 𝐀𝐦's demand. 𝐀𝐦 scoffs, turning on his heel. "I'm leaving. I'm hungry and tired, and if I have to put up with any more emotional shit while I'm like this, I'm filing for divorce." "Well, let's not be so hasty." 𝐼𝐻𝐬 trots up beside him, grinning as he offers 𝐀𝐦 his arm. "Come on, I'll walk you to your door." 𝐀𝐦 glances from the proffered arm to 𝐼𝐻𝐬's gaze, then rolls his eyes. "You're insufferable." Still, he takes his arm. "You're worse," the redhead replies with a grin and a wink, a goddamn wink, and as ridiculous as it all is, it still sends butterflies fluttering disgustingly in 𝐀�Y's stomach. "Gross." He glares down the hallway. "Hey, 𝐀𝐦." "What?" And when 𝐀𝐦 turns his head to 𝐼𝐻𝐬, the redhead just leans down and places a quick peck to the crease between his brows. The simple action shocking the glare from 𝐀�Y's face, replacing it with a fierce burning in his undoubtedly flushed cheeks. "Nothing," 𝐼𝐻𝐬 replies innocently, though there's a decided smugness written into his grin. He tugs 𝐀𝐦 forward by the arm. "We should really get going, before Denki devours everything but the kitchen sink." That's enough to get 𝐀�Y's legs moving again. He'll be a dead man if he does. Izuku is glad to see that 𝐀𝐦, 𝐼𝐻𝐬, and Denki have all made up, the tensions once underlying their actions nothing more than a vague memory on the edge of their minds. He's glad, he really is. But that doesn't make it any less weird when all three friends insist on cramming themselves into a single queen bed that was definitely not designed to hold three fully grown men. But it's whatever, really. They're happy, and that's all that matters. After all, it makes Izuku's decision that much easier. It's creeping into the early hours of the morning, the sky on the horizon lightening with the first hint of sunrise. The world is still silent, as though the city had yet to awaken. Izuku hadn't meant to be up this early, long before any self-respecting person would, but all night his rest had been plagued with unease and anxiety keeping him from sleep. Today would be their last in Reno, set to depart around noon. He didn't have a lot of time left to achieve his ultimate goal. It's now or never. Izuku Midoriya is finally going to confront his father. And it's kind of funny. This very thought had been driving Izuku all this time, had filled his waking hours with theories and maps, had inspired this very journey, and now with the finish line in his sights, his goal just beyond his grasp, he had never felt farther away. Because in all that time spent planning and preparing and even executing, he hadn't really stopped to consider exactly what he was doing, what it really meant for him to be confronting his father after all this time. What he would say, what he really hoped to get out of it. Closure is what that little voice in his mind tells him, but what does closure even mean? What does closure even look like? Did he want to know why his father left? To know if his life were better or worse now? To know if his leaving tore him up inside as much as it did Izuku? Izuku sighs, rubbing at his sore eyes. The reason doesn't matter, not right now, at least. He'd figure out his game plan on the way there, decide how to approach his father, what to say to him, if he would play it cool, or if he would vent his feelings, lay his hurt and frustration and confusion and anger and pain out in the open for his father to see, in the vain attempt that maybe, just maybe, the very act of openness could heal those wounds, could lay the groundwork for the reconciliation Izuku isn't even sure he's after. He pushes the thoughts aside for now. He'll figure it out later. Right now, he has enough to worry about. As silently as he can, Izuku pads around the hotel room, quickly dressing and attempting to tame his sleep-musk curls before slipping his shoes on, casting a final long look at his three companions, still fast asleep, unaware of what was to transpire. Denki's barely even in the bed anymore, limbs askew and hanging over the edge of the mattress. 𝐼𝐻𝐬's in the middle, head tipped back against the pillow and mouth hanging wide, the occasional snore rumbling from deep within his chest. And 𝐀�Y's to his other side, wrapped around the comforter he's hogging from the others, the spoils of a sleep-addled war that had undoubtedly occurred in the silent hours of the night. They all appear content, still deep in sleep. If Izuku played this right, he could be gone and back long before they roused. and they could carry on their day none the wiser, no new obstacle thrown into the journey of their road trip. Izuku scans the counter, quickly locating the car keys Katsuki had carelessly tossed there upon returning to the hotel yesterday. The keys jangle slightly as Izuku tucks them safely into his pocket, wincing at the volume, seemingly amplified in the silence of the room. Still, a cautious glance towards the others proves none have been disturbed. He sighs in relief. Izuku tucks a hotel key into his pocket as well, then finally makes his way out the door, easing it shut with a silent click that still echoes somehow throughout the hotel. It's probably all in Izuku's head. Despite his anxieties, everything is going fine. At least, it is until he gets to the parking lot. Izuku nestles deeper into his bunny hug. The morning air a little chillier than he had anticipated. Seriously, wasn't Nevada supposed to be fairly warm? Sure, it was February, but still. He reaches Katsuki's car, fishing the keys from his pocket. Of course, his chilled fingers fumble the keys, and they go tumbling to the pavement at his feet. Izuku sighs, crouching to retrieve them. Typical clumsy Izuku. Behind him, a door slams, a harsh clamor against the quiet morning, and it startles Izuku, his hand clutching reflexively, thumb pressing, of course, right into the panic button. The result is instant. Car horn piercing the silence with its blaring shriek, undoubtedly drawing the attention of everyone in the hotel, heck, everyone in the entire state. Izuku glances around wildly, panic making clumsy his movements as he frantically presses the buttons on the key fob in an attempt to silence the horn. Curtains shift in the hotel windows, sleepy faces peering out to see the commotion. And finally Izuku manages to turn the horn off, the last honk echoing hauntingly through the air. The silence returns, but punctuated now by Izuku's labored breathing and the thrum of his racing heart against the walls of his chest. Slowly, he rises from his crouch, straightening out his bunny hug as he takes a cautious look around. There's a middle-aged white woman standing just outside of one of the hotel's side doors, taking drags from a cigarette and looking none too pleased by the racket that had disturbed the peace of her early morning smoke, or maybe her face just kind of looked like that. Whatever, the peering eyes from the hotel had disappeared now. Their interest no longer piqued, and Izuku lets the tension leave his shoulders, sighing in relief. He turns back to the car, successfully unlocking it this time and pulling open the door. What the hell do you think you're doing? And look, Izuku has been fortunate enough in his life to have yet to see the face of death for himself. But if he had to guess, he'd say it looks pretty darn close to how Katsuki looks now, standing at the threshold of the side door, brows furrowed, face pinched and red, nostrils flaring with every haggard breath, and teeth bared in a fearsome snarl. But the worst are his eyes, slitted pits of rage like twin black holes threatening to consume everything around them. And suddenly Izuku understands the whole deer in the headlights adage. Deku, Katsuki growls, taking a menacing step forward, and although just the simple iteration of a name, there's a threat saturating his words, though what that threat entails, Izuku isn't about to stick around to find out. Flight instinct roaring to life in his veins, Izuku jolts to action, swinging himself into the driver's seat and slamming the door behind him, repeatedly jamming his fingers down on the lock button to protect himself against the unadulterated fury of Katsuki Bakugo, unleashed in the form of spitting curses and fists pounding against the glass window. "Open this goddamn door," Katsuki demands, voice muffled by the barrier between them. He fruitlessly attempts to tug the locked door open, then returns to banging on the window. "Deku, I swear to God," but whatever righteous invocation on Katsuki's tongue is lost in the clamor of an engine roaring to life, Izuku clumsily jamming the key into the ignition and cranking it forward. Katsuki's shouts continue, growing more furious with every second that it takes Izuku to fumble with his seatbelt, locking it into place before reaching for the gear shift, turning his head to meet the other boy's gaze through the window. "I'm sorry," he whispers, despite knowing that Katsuki wouldn't hear. Still, Katsuki must see the movement of his lips, the former's brows furrowing slightly in what more so resembles confusion than rage, hands shifting to the door handle once again. "Deku," Izuku doesn't give himself the chance to back out. He shifts the car into reverse, stomping his foot down on the gas as the car jolts backwards with a lot more speed than Izuku had anticipated. He whips his head around to watch behind him, just in time to see the parked car he's careening towards. And panic-stricken, he cranks the wheel, paying no mind to the direction in his attempt to go anywhere but straight. He clears the parked car safely, his front end narrowly missing the corner of the other's bumper as he whips around in a tight arc. But before Izuku can marvel at the car's impressive cornering abilities, he feels the car lurch, momentum killed, and a sickening crash echoing through the air. And like the car, Izuku himself stills, a sudden chill settling deep into his bones and encasing his joints, making his movements jerky and stiff as he shifts the car into park. Or maybe it's less like ice filling his veins, and more like a disconnect, the jarring crash knocking loose the wires connecting voluntary and involuntary action. Izuku, EXE offline, his body set to autopilot, for surely it's not Izuku who shuts the car off, who mechanically pushes open the driver's side door and pulls himself up out of the seat, who assesses the damage, the bumper dented around a small wooden post, with such a cool detachment, as though he were not truly seeing what he saw. And even the pounding of approaching footsteps seem eerily muted now, the enraged and concerned shouts that join them only reaching Izuku's ears through a thick layer of cotton, barely indiscernible from the ringing in his ears. But maybe that's why it doesn't hurt as much as it should when Katsuki shoves him against the side of the car, why he doesn't even flinch at the sight of black holes and sharp teeth and a fist raised to strike. Then 𝐲𝐻 and Denki appear at Katsuki's sides, arms looping around the enraged boy and dragging him back before he can inflict any further damage. They're all yelling, spitting and cursing with flared nostrils and bared teeth, but the sound has yet to really reach Izuku. He's watching the scene from afar, seeing it all unfurl before him like an old silent movie, colors drained away to shades of gray. And he wants it to stop, wants to look away, or turn it off, but his mind won't make his body act the way he wants it to. He concentrates, eyes barely registering the conflict before him as he slowly flexes his hand, fingers curling into a fist. Katsuki's still yelling, the others attempting to calm him down. Izuku watches the way his lips pull back in a snarl, the way his jaw stretches and snaps with every biting word, and though he can't hear a thing above the blood roaring in his ears, he can't help but wish Katsuki would just shut up. Just stop. Can't you see I'm angry too? Because he is angry, he realizes, his fist tightening at his side. There, just at the edge of the disconnect, burns something hot, something volatile, something threatening to spill over into his veins and set him alight. And it's only when he hones in on that feeling, on the heat smoldering in his fingertips, on the roaring of his pulse in his ears, does that fog settled over his mind begin to disperse, and autonomy return to his body. And when Izuku, 𝐸𝐸 finally comes back online, it's with the sharp sting of knuckles connecting solidly with the bone of Katsuki's cheek. Izuku, what the fuck? But Izuku barely hears 𝐲𝐻's outcry, senses clouded by the pain that flares through the bones in his hand, shooting up his wrist and forearm as he retracts his fist, shaking it out as though that could help dissipate the discomfort. Cause that's one thing the movies never warn you about, just how painful it is to punch someone. It's no shock that the one smote should feel excruciating pain at the sight of impact, but rarely does the one who smites appear to share in the agony. And yet here Izuku is, nursing his throbbing hand as Katsuki stumbles backward, hand flying to cradle his injured cheek. It's poetic symbolism, how physical violence hurts both the victim and the assailant, leaving behind nothing but pain and resentment. And maybe Izuku would explore the idea further sometime, would write about it and in doing so unravel the subtle intricacies within. But for now, he had much more pressing, and pissed off, matters to attend to. Katsuki's head whips toward him, hand dropping from his cheek as the surprise in his eyes is replaced by burning fury. Fuck this protection bullshit, he snarls, taking a threatening step forward. You're fucking dead. Izuku's body tenses, but 𝐲𝐻's quick to intercept. Hey, he thrusts his arm in front of Katsuki, barring his way. Whoa, that's enough. Enough. Katsuki redirects his glare to 𝐲𝐻. He fucking hit me. 𝐲𝐻 doesn't seem persuaded though, so Katsuki tries to push past him. Fuck this, he hisses as he shoves 𝐲𝐻's arm away, but the redhead is quick to grab hold of him, keeping him in place. Let me go, Katsuki demands, struggling against his hold. 𝐲𝐻, I swear to God. And Izuku can't stand the grating of Katsuki's voice on his already frayed nerves. He clenches his fists at his sides again, ignoring the pain as he screams, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Easy now, Denki warns, or maybe soothes, stepping in front of Izuku to bar him from Katsuki. Katsuki pushes against 𝐲𝐻 again, but the latter doesn't budge. Don't tell me to. But he cuts off sharply when Izuku tries to lunge at him, Denki blocking his attempt easily despite being so taken by surprise. Katsuki's eyes widen in shock too, though the expression is quickly overtaken by anger. What the hell is your problem? My problem, Izuku spits back, glaring past Denki at the pale-haired boy. What the hell is your problem? And finally, the confusion causes Katsuki to go lax in 𝐲𝐻's grip. What? You're always yelling at and belittling everyone around you without stopping for a moment to just think that maybe there's something else going on, something beyond just the rampant incompetence you seem to pin on others. He pauses for a breath, shaking his head. I mean, just once in your goddamn life, would it kill you to be calm? Calm, Katsuki repeats, incredulous. How am I supposed to be calm when you just tried to steal my fucking car? I don't know. Just stop yelling at me. I'm not yelling. Yes, you are. Fuck you. Fuck you. Holy shit, Denki hisses, taking a step back. Even 𝐲𝐻's arms fall away at this, eyes wide and jaw drop to the floor. Katsuki grits his teeth, shaking his head. You've got some real fucking nerve treating me like this. 𝐲𝐻 says warningly. But Katsuki carries on unassuaged. All that talk about wanting to be friends and yet this is how you act. He scoffs. What, was that stupid little heart-to-heart just some cruel attempt to manipulate me so you could stab me in the back? enact some sort of twisted revenge on me. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 𝐈𝐬 tries again, but 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 doesn't seem to hear, too focused on 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬. You don't understand. 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 insists. No, I don't. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 assents, laughing humorlessly. God, I don't understand you at all. I mean, I drove you down here, just like you wanted. I got you to that convention, just like you wanted. I even helped you meet 𝐷𝐸 𝐍𝐸, just like you've always fucking wanted. And yet you still turn around and try to steal my car. So what the fuck am I missing, Deku? Was the convention not good enough for you? I didn't come down here for some stupid convention. 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 shouts, unable to bottle up to truth anymore. I came to find my dad. And finally, 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 is blissfully silent, eyes widened, mouth gaping as he tries to process. And in that silence, 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 can finally breathe, taking in a lungful of cool morning air as he prepares to explain. My dad, he's down here somewhere. I know he is. And I need to find him. I need to talk to him. I need to know. I need to know why he left us, why we weren't enough for him. And I'm not leaving until I get answers. 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 𝐈𝐬 whispers sympathetically, eyes clouded. No. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬's eyes narrow, his brain finally catching up to the words. No, there's no way you managed to actually track your dad down, not after all these years. You're delusional, that's all. Denki glares at him. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬, ease off. No, he spits, glancing between his companions. Someone has to be the voice of reason here. 𝐈𝐬 just shakes his head. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬, but 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 ignores him, fixing his attention back on 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬. I drove you all the way down here, he starts, jabbing a finger into 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬's chest. You're my responsibility, and I can't just let you go off on some dumbass patriarch hunt. No fucking way. Surprisingly, it's Denki who swats 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬's hand away. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬, seriously. Just back off, man. I can't believe this. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 shakes his head, planting his hands on his hips. You idiots are actually taking his side. We're not taking anyone's side, 𝐈𝐬 defends, letting the insult slide. It's just that none of us are in the right emotional state to be making potentially life-changing decisions. And we all need to take some time to process his before we rush into anything. There's no decision to be made, 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 insists. We're not encouraging this. I'm serious, 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 claims, crossing his arms over his chest. I'm not leaving without finding my dad. Tough shit, 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 mirrors his pose. Go pack your bag. I'm done talking about this now. With that, he shoulders past 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬, striding to the back of the car to assess the damage. Shit, he hisses, more to himself than anyone else, raking a hand through his hair. Look at this mess. 𝐈𝐬 goes to join him, making it a point to avoid 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 as he passes. You know, it's really not as bad as it seems. I mean, he missed your taillight. And it looks like the trunk will still open and close fine. Fury ignites in 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬's core once again, enraged by being ignored. I'm not joking. He insists again. I will find him. I will. But 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 and 𝐈𝐬 don't acknowledge him, too preoccupied with the car. Denki claps him on the shoulder wordlessly before making his way over to the other boys. The action is harmless, probably meant to soothe, but it feels condescending, like an adult attempting to appease a belligerent child. 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 huffs, turning his back on them and stomping back towards the hotel, uncaring if the act really did make him look like a child. Whatever, he doesn't need the others to understand, doesn't need their support. 𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐬 will find his dad all on his own. He has to. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 might be a bit of an asshole sometimes, but he's definitely not rude. Which is why, when Mrs. Midoriya approached him in the corner convenience the day before the planned trip to Rena, he didn't pretend to not notice her presence or not recognize her or any other number of avoidance techniques he had learned during his grueling years in the service industry. Instead, he straightened up at the front counter, greeting her with a curt nod. Evening. Mrs. Midoriya smiled warmly at him. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬, it's good to see you. Why, it's been too long. How are you? Fine. Busy. He said it with a shrug. She laughed in response. Ah yes, the joys of being a student. I definitely don't miss those days. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 huffed a small laugh, smiling one of those gross white people non-smiles. Yeah, one of these days I'll have to get 𝐬𝐡𝐢 to invite you over for dinner. Then you can tell me all about how your first semester is going. She said it as though she was unaware of any ill feelings between 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 and 𝐬𝐡𝐢, but 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 was no fool. Mrs. Midoriya was always trying to mend the bond between her son and 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬, as though there were anything there worth saving. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 never saw it, but he could never bring himself to deny it so plainly. Speaking of that boy, she had continued, glancing around the store, do you know if he's done yet? I left the truck running, and I don't want to keep it idling long. He'll be out soon. Just had to finish doing some stuff in the back. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 fiddled with a magazine display on the counter, smirking to himself. I was pretty peeved that he convinced Mrs. Lee to let him off an hour earlier than me tonight, so I made him reorganize all the stock in preparation for tomorrow's shipment. Serves him right. Mrs. Midoriya shook her head in amusement. Oh, 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬, I can always count on you to keep my boy humble. She glanced at her watch. Still, he better hurry. I know he still needs to finish packing tonight. He's hoping to leave pretty early tomorrow. Yeah, it's a long trip, and he's got us on a tight schedule, but I'm sure we'll be fine. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 had said it offhandedly, so he hadn't expected the look of surprise that his words were met with. You're headed to Saskatoon with him as well. Saskatoon. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 wrinkled his nose. Nah, a group of us are heading down to Nevada. It was Izuku's idea, actually. And something in Mrs. Midoriya's posture had changed so suddenly then, relaxed carefree lines turning rigid. He's going where? It didn't take long for 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 to catch up. He didn't tell you. He told me he was heading up to Saskatoon with Ochako to visit Ada for a few days. She told him, tone clip. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, did my son lie to me? And when choosing between suffering the wrath of an angry mother or selling out Izuku, the decision was easy to make. So 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 had told her all about Izuku's plan to drive down to Reno to attend the fan con. But don't be mad at him, he said at the end of his quick speech, feeling the need to downplay the situation, though more to save himself from her potential reaction than for Izuku's sake. It'll be a super chill road trip. You don't have to worry. I'm not mad, she said in that way that parents do when they're absolutely pissed. I'm just upset that he felt he couldn't trust me with this. She leans against the counter slightly, rubbing a tired hand across her forehead. I was worried he wouldn't take my pregnancy well, but he seemed so fine with it at first. I should have known better. Maybe then I could have prevented this ... This. She gestured vaguely with a hand, searching for the right word. Rebellion. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 snorted. Please. His version of rebellion would be going to bed at 11 instead of 10:30. He laughed, shaking his head. Nah, it's just a part of growing up, or whatever. Just trust that he knows what he can handle. She cocked an unimpressed brow at him. And you've learned this from all the children you've successfully raised? Yes. He shrugged a shoulder. I mean, I practically raised myself, and I'd like to think I did an okay job. Her features softened then, but just as she opened her mouth to speak, Izuku emerged from the back room, a grin spreading over his face when he sees her. Hey mom, I just need to grab my bag from the staff room. Then we can head out. Okay Izu, but quickly, she told him. And with a nod Izuku disappeared back behind the employee's only door. Mrs. Midoriya turned back to 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬. I don't know what to make of all this, and I'm not happy about it in the slightest. She took a deep breath. I'll trust him with this, and that he had a good reason to not tell me about it. But 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, she pointed a perfectly manicured nail at him, almost threateningly, I'm also trusting you. Please, take care of my son for me. Izuku remerged, backpack slung over his shoulder, eyes so fixed on his phone screen that he nearly ran into one of the display shelves. He stopped himself just in time, laughing as he glanced over at the other two. Oops, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 sighed, the beginnings of a headache forming in his temples. What am I getting myself into? Still, he met Mrs. Midoriya's gaze. I will, he told her, voice low. I promise. It's this promise that rings through his mind now as he finishes stuffing the rest of his things into his duffel bag, zipping it shut with a satisfied sigh. This morning had already been too hectic for 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's liking, and he's itching to get back on the road again and finally bring an end to this apparently cursed trip. Of course, there's one small obstacle in his way to freedom. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 slips into the room, hands stuffed into his pockets as he sighs. So, he's still out there. Should one of us maybe try talking to him? Now that he's settled down a bit. I'd do it, Denki says from where he's reclined on one of the beds. But I don't think Zuko and I are quite on that level of friendship yet. I can do it, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 offers, shrugging. You guys can start getting the car packed. Take care of my son. I promise. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose. No, I should be the one to do it. It'll mean more coming from me, anyway. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 smiles, small and proud. Yeah, you're probably right, he says, grabbing his bag and slinging it over his shoulder. Think you know what you'll say to him? 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 shakes his head. Not one fucking clue. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 laughs, clapping him on the shoulder and letting his hand linger there. You'll figure it out, I know you will. Just take your time. Denki and I can get the car loaded. He gives 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Good luck, he says before making his way out of the room. Denki is close behind him, and as he passes by 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, he croons, good luck, sweetie. But when he attempts to plant an exaggerated peck on 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's cheek, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's quick to shove him away. Fuck off. Denki just laughs him off. Soon 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's alone in the hotel room, left to try and figure out what exactly he could say to Izuku that would convince him to forget his paternal plot and come home with them. And 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 knows what he wants to say. Something along the lines of suck it up, you whiny bitch. But even he knows this situation calls for a much more, well, delicate approach. Maybe he could say it with more tact. Hey, sucks about your daddy issues. But get over it. No, it needs to be softer. I'm really sorry that you're dealing with such emotional turmoil, but so is everybody else. Now suck it up and let's go home. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 groans, pressing the heels of his palms against his eyes. Why does this have to be so hard? Maybe he really should have left it to 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬. The guy's got a way of balancing sympathy An assholery, something 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 never seemed to master. But no, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 made a promise, and he's determined to keep it no matter what it takes. He lets his hands drop, sighing. You know what? Fuck it. He's just gonna say the first thing that comes into his mind. Consequences be damned. After all, to make an omelet, you've gotta risk exacerbating some deeply rooted emotional scars and hope that your interference in the matter will more so help heal said trauma rather than worsen the damage irreversibly. And something about eggs. Whatever. Resolute, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 snatches the key card from the counter and heads off in search of Izuku. It's easy enough to find the curly-haired boy. He's perched at the edge of the swimming pool, jeans rolled up to his knees and bare feet soaking idly in the clear water. It's where he's been ever since the pool opened that morning, stewing in his thoughts as he refused to join the others in their pursuit of repacking for the return trip, adamant to remain in Reno. His stubbornness might be kind of admirable, if it weren't so fucking annoying, that is. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 doesn't announce his presence, silently coming to stand at the water's edge next to Izuku. Still, Izuku must see his reflection in the water, for without sparing the other a glance, he says, I don't want to hear it. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 stuffs his hands into the front pockets of his jeans. You have no idea what I'm gonna say. You're going to try and convince me to forget about my dad and come home with you guys. Izuku's gaze remains fixed on the water below, unfocused and unblinking, as dull as his voice. But I mean it, I'm not leaving here until I see him. Look, I'm sorry about how I reacted earlier, and for upsetting you so much. But seriously, Deku, you've gotta realize how ridiculous your plan sounds. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 tries to reason. I mean, you don't even know if he's actually here or not. Those addresses are all duds for all you know. But Izuku doesn't waver. Even if they are, he says, a sudden edge to his tone, I'm not going to leave without at least trying. And there's nothing you can do or say to change my mind. And there's something about the way he says it, something in his voice or the set of the shoulders, that makes 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 realize he's right. There's no way he's going to convince Izuku to change his mind. Maybe he could overpower him physically, force the other boy into the car and drive him back home kicking and screaming. But would that really be the best way to do it? Sure, he might be protecting Izuku in the short term, but who's to say he won't try something even riskier in the long run, something that 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 won't be able to shield him from. Silence settles over the pair, punctuated only by the gentle lapping of water against the pool's edge and 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's resigned sigh as he slowly lowers himself to the tile below, crossing his legs along the edge. Maybe if they just sat there long enough, Izuku would get bored and be more open to suggestion. It's a long shot. There's no way 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 would outlast Izuku, but what choice did he have? They can't stay in Reno forever, but he can't force Izuku to come home with them either. He could entertain the boy's plan of tracking down his father, but then what? Would he just stand by and watch as Izuku's heart breaks when his search turns up fruitless? Or worse, would he have to witness his entire world come apart when Izuku does meet his father, but it's not the heartfelt reunion that he desires? Because 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 knows there's no way in hell that meeting would ever go well. Not after the way Izuku's father left so long ago. Was that it then? No matter what, was 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 doomed to fail to protect Izuku? Doomed to fail to uphold his promise to Mrs. Midoriya? He clenches his hands into fists. This shouldn't be so complicated. Why did he even have to be the one to protect Izuku anyways? Why did Izuku need protecting at all? His eyes widen. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not about protection, about shielding the boy from the dangers of the world. Maybe it's something else. Trust that he knows what he can handle. And fuck, sometimes 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 wishes he weren't the pinnacle of human wisdom. All right, he says, finally breaking the silence. Let's go. Izuku's head whips towards him. Did you not just hear me? He spits, a dormant anger now bubbling to the surface. I said I'm not going home until... I never said anything about going home. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 cuts in, pushing himself up off the pool deck to stand. Izuku squints up at him. What? In lieu of an actual answer, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 makes his way towards the exit. Pack your shit and let's get out of here, he says, pausing once he reaches the door. He looks over his shoulder at a still dumbfounded Izuku and smirks. It's about time we paid your old man a visit. Predictably, the first address is a bust, the GPS leading them to an empty lot in a warehouse district, far removed from anything even remotely residential, but by some stroke of luck the second address proves much more fruitful. It's a simple two-story house in one of those suburbs where all the houses look the same sand-colored plaster, same white trim, same manicured lawns. They make their way down the street at a crawl, attempting to get a good look at the house without seeming too creepy, an impossible endeavor, really, but at least they try. There's a man in the front yard, trimming one of the bushes that line the front walk. And as soon as Izuku lays eyes on him from his place in the passenger seat, he sucks in a breath, body going rigid. That's him. Are you sure? Ijiru asks, straining against his seatbelt as he leans against the front seats, trying to get a better look. Izuku nods. Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm sure of it. To 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬, he says pull up over there, just by those garbage cans. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬's not convinced. But who is he to play skeptic? He shrugs. All right, but if you die, that's on you, not me. He pulls the car over as directed, putting it into park. He glances into his side mirror to try and get a better look at the man who Izuku so believes to be his father. He looks to be in his early 50s, skin much darker than Izuku's, the result of living under the hot Nevada sun, no doubt, and dark hair speckled with gray. There's nothing there to suggest that this man really is Izuku's dad, but Izuku is convinced. And maybe that would just have to be enough. With shaky hands, Izuku unbuckles his seatbelt. All right. His voice is breathless, strained. Here it goes. Do you know what you're gonna say to him? Denki asks. No idea, Izuku admits. His palms rest against the door handle, but he hesitates to push it open. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Ijuru attempts to reassure him. Yeah, you'll be great, Denki adds, clapping Izuku on the shoulder. It seems to jolt him out of his stupor, for finally, Izuku nods. Right, I can do this, he says, pushing open the door. I can do this, he repeats, more to himself this time as he climbs out of the car, Denki and Ijuru still cheering him on. Hey, Deku, Katsuki says suddenly, silencing the others. Izuku turns to him, eyes owlishly wide behind his glasses. God, he looks like such a nerd. Katsuki pushes the thought away. Yeah, don't fuck up. Izuku squares his shoulders. I won't. With that declaration, he shuts the door, with a little too much force for Katsuki's liking. But the guy's about to do what's probably the scariest thing he's ever done in his life, so Katsuki lets it slide. Izuku pauses on the edge of the sidewalk, looking both ways before crossing despite how barren and quiet this residential street is. Maybe he's still psyching himself up. Maybe he's just that much of a nerd. The car's remaining passengers crowd the windows, watching Izuku's approach with bated breath. Are you sure this is a good idea? Ijuru asks, practically sitting on top of Denki in an attempt to get a better view. No, Katsuki admits, hands needlessly gripping the steering wheel. In fact, I think this is the dumbest thing he could be doing. Then why let him do it at all? Cause it's not my choice to make, Katsuki replies, watching as Izuku stalls by feigning interest in some flyer taped to a light post. It's his, and I just have to trust that he knows what he can handle. And if he can't, Katsuki shifts his gaze away from the street, suddenly unable to find it in himself to watch. Ijuru's right. What if Izuku can't handle it? What will Katsuki do then? Take care of my son. I promise. His eyes fall upon his hands, the skin of the knuckles turning white, and he forces himself to relax, taking a deep, steadying breath. Then at least I'm here to support him. I think you mean we're here. Denki chimes in, leaning around Ijuru to meet Katsuki's gaze in the rearview. To quote the greatest film in cinematic history, we're all in this together. Katsuki snorts, shaking his head in amusement. Yeah, I guess we are. But there's another set of eyes on him in the rearview, wide and shiny red, paired with what has to be the dopiest smile Katsuki's ever seen. He squints back at Ijuru. Why are you looking at me like that? I just really... He stops himself abruptly, huffing a laugh as he turns his attention back out the window. You and Izuku have come a long way, he starts again, and I'm really proud of you. And somehow, Katsuki knows that's not what Ijuru was originally going to say. But for now, he decides not to press the matter, anything to keep the redhead's eyes off of him for a moment, until the heat subsides from his cheeks once again. Ah, Denki drawls, voice shrill. Well, aren't you two just the sweetest? He laughs, ignoring the glare Katsuki shoots his way before continuing in his normal voice. But seriously, make sure you invite me to the wedding. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course I'm invited. I'm the best man. There's no way in hell you're coming to my wedding. Katsuki growls, whirling around in his seat to address the other directly. Denki hums, shaking his head. You say that now, but before long you'll be begging me to walk you down the aisle. Fuck no. You're probably just worried I'll look better in a dress than you will. Denki examines his nails, nonchalant as though his subversion of typical gender norms were nothing of note, and Katsuki, so unprepared for such casual sedition, can only blink at him, head cocked in confusion. What? But don't worry, Denki carries on, unconcerned. Even I'm not dumb enough to wear white to a wedding. Katsuki scoffs, turning his attention to Ijuru, whose face had practically been plastered to the window for the entire exchange. Ijuru, are you even listening to this bullshit? No, everyone be quiet. Ijuru hisses, gaze fixed as he hurriedly waves them off. We can plan the wedding later. Just look. 73, 74, 75. Izuku counts his steps as he walks. It's the only thing keeping him from devolving into a panic, keeping his thoughts just occupied enough to combat the gnawing fear threatening the stillness in his mind. What if it's not him? What if he gets mad? What if he hates me? 86, 87, 88. He breathes deeply, matching each to the steady rhythm of his footsteps. 92, 93, 94. Time feels slowed, the world strangely muted, with only the beating of his heart echoing in his ears to break the silence he's suspended in. 98, 99. Then a new noise cuts in, shattering the moment and plunging Izuku back into reality, into manicured lawns and cookie-cutter townhouses. It's the gentle rumble of an engine and tires on pavement, a simple red minivan cruising by. Izuku watches it pass, watches as it gradually slows to pull into the driveway of his father's house, and Izuku's legs no longer work, feet rooted to the pavement as the scene unfolds before him, a silent montage drained of color playing out before him in slow motion. The van parks in the driveway, engine cutting off before a woman climbs out of the driver's seat, and Izuku's dad pauses in his task as he paces towards her. He plants a quick kiss on her cheek as the van's side door slides open, a small child emerging and immediately racing to cling to his dad's leg. His dad lifts the child and swings them around in a joyous arc. It plays like one of those pharmaceutical commercials where a voiceover lists all the atrocious side effects of the drug while displaying some sickeningly sweet scene. And the observation would be a lot more entertaining had it not been set to the soundtrack of Izuku's entire heart shattering to pieces on the pavement before him. He's not conscious of his feet beginning to move, awareness only returning when his hand meets the door handle of Katsuki's car, yanking it open and practically throwing himself down into the passenger seat. 3 alarmed gazes whip towards him. It's Katsuki who speaks. "Deku, just drive." His voice is surprisingly steady, curt, to the point. Katsuki frowns. "But your dad, we need to go," he reiterates, pulling his seatbelt across his chest and clicking the buckle into place. "Now, just," his voice breaks, and he takes a deep breath. "Please Kaken, just drive." Katsuki looks like he wants to argue, brows furrowed and jaw working over. Finally, he just nods. "All right, okay." He swallows, hand on the gear shift slipping the car into drive. "Okay." There's a hand on his shoulder. Izuku glances back to meet Ijiru's gaze. Ijiru gives his shoulder a squeeze. He says nothing, but there's a question in his red eyes. Izuku has to look away, something catching in his throat. "I couldn't do it to him." "Your dad?" Ijiru asks. Izuku shakes his head. "The kid. He doesn't deserve to suffer because of me. To suffer like you did." Denki finishes, voice barely above a whisper. "Like your dad made you." Izuku presses his lips firmly together, gaze fixed on the road before him. Ijiru's grip on his shoulder tightens again. "You didn't deserve that either, you know." His eyes burn. "Can we just, I don't want to talk about this anymore." "Okay." Katsuki agrees easily, his gaze shifting up to the rear view, fixing the backseat occupants with a pointed look. "Let's just get the fuck out here." They'll be driving well into the night at this point, but it beats spending another night in Reno, which Katsuki is convinced is actually cursed. Scratch that. This entire road trip is cursed, and the sooner he's back on Canadian soil, the better. Daytime driving conditions be damned. Before finally departing from Reno, they pull into a gas station for a quick fill and to stock up on snacks for the ride ahead. They had already devised a plan to rotate drivers through the night, so with any luck, they'd reach Montana before really having to stop and recuperate. But Katsuki wasn't holding his breath. He's alone out at the pumps, watching the numbers on the gauge gradually rise with every gallon of gas pumped. It's a mild evening, enough so to make him forget it was even February. The stillness of the air feels wrong though. It's too peaceful of a contrast to the absolute shitshow they had just endured. The day has left him feeling heavy, pressed down upon, his skin too tight for his body. He feels uncomfortable, overstimulated. Wrong. The pump clicks off. The numbers stop. His mind keeps spinning. "We're back." Ijiru's voice rings out, and Katsuki nearly jumps, blinking away his thoughts as the others join him at the car. The redhead holds up a plastic convenience store bag. "And we brought sustenance." "You brought trash, more likely," Katsuki gripes, setting to work replacing the nozzle and screwing in the gas cap. "In my defense," Ijiru says, leaning against the side of the car, "a gas station convenience store isn't exactly the best place to find anything with real nutritional value." Katsuki huffs a breath through his nose, a humorless laugh, if he could call it that. His gaze wanders, finding Denki and Izuku several paces away. Denki's saying something. Mindless chatter, most likely, hands gesturing wildly around him, but it's apparent that Izuku's not really paying attention, absently licking away at the ice cream cone in his hand, his gaze directed somewhere across the parking lot. Ijiru notices his distraction, and he lightly nudges him with a foot, bringing Katsuki's gaze back to him. "Hey, what's up? How's he doing?" Katsuki asks, jerking his chin towards Izuku. Ijiru glances over at the pair. "He's quiet. I don't know, man." He shakes his head, running a hand through his hair. He's trying to hold himself together. "But, fuck, man, the guy's obviously in pain. And I want to help him, but I don't know what I can do." Katsuki hums, but says nothing. Really, what could he say? He's never been good at comforting others, had always left that part up to Ijiru. But if even the redhead was at a loss, what hope did Katsuki have? Fuck, maybe it would have been better to just drag Izuku home, kicking and screaming, but otherwise okay. Katsuki could deal with that, with his anger, his resentment, even his fists striking flesh, whatever the boy threw at him. But this broken Izuku, so utterly worn by the world, unable to even muster up a smile. What is he supposed to do? A hand slips into his, drawing Katsuki's attention back to Aijiru. The redhead gives his hand a squeeze, a small smile on his lips. "We'll figure it out," he murmurs, as though reading Katsuki's mind, and the blonde just nods, squeezing Aijiru's hand in turn. Aijiru glances back towards the duo, and finding them otherwise occupied, he gently pulls Katsuki towards him, leaning down to press a delicate kiss to his cheek. Still tender, pale flesh mottled with the beginnings of a bruise, but the action does wonders to soothe the uncomfortable twisting in his stomach. Katsuki sighs, letting his eyes slide shut as he rests his forehead against Aijiru's shoulder. And he'd gladly stay there forever, basking in Aijiru's scent, in his warmth, but unfortunately, he's still at some shitty little gas station in Reno fucking Nevada, and no amount of wishful thinking would change that. Katsuki takes one last deep breath in. Then on the exhale says, "We should get going." Aijiru mumbles in agreement, pressing a quick kiss to his temple before pulling away. And the loss of contact is unwelcome but necessary. Katsuki turns towards the other two. "All right, losers, get in the car. We're getting the fuck out of here." Denki's quick to head over, but Izuku doesn't seem to hear, too caught up in his own reverie to know what's going on around him. He's staring blankly into the distance, it seems, but when Katsuki tries to follow his gaze, he finds that Izuku's not totally zoned out. No, he's focused on a distant scene unfolding. A father and his young son roughhousing joyously in the parking lot, smiles plastered to their faces, no trace of sorrow or strife painted on their features. It sends something sharp panging through Katsuki's heart, after what they'd been through today. He can only imagine how Izuku feels. "Boy," he calls, trying to gain the other boy's attention. "Deku, let's go." Izuku jolts, startled by the call, hands clumsily juggling the ice cream cone but to no avail. It splatters to the ground, painting the pavement at Izuku's feet. He stares down at it, silent. Then his shoulders start to shake, and he inhales a choking breath. Well, it was bound to happen eventually. They race towards him, and Denki, being the closest of the three, reaches him first, clapping a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Hey buddy, it's okay. We can get you another one." "Dumbass," Katsuki chastises, rolling his eyes. "He's not crying over a fucking ice cream cone." Denki frowns. "Then why?" "He's my dad," Izuku chokes out, curled in on himself as sobs rack his body. "He's my dad. Why did he? How could he just?" Aijiru's eyes soften. "See me, man," he says, drawing Izuku's trembling body against his own. "It's okay, let it out. He's my dad," Izuku repeats, voice now muffled by the fabric of Aijiru's t-shirt. I miss him. I miss him so much. I can't." "Why?" Aijiru rubs soothing circles into his back. "I'm sorry, Izuku." But it doesn't stop Izuku's distressed ramblings. "He just left us." "How could he just leave like that?" "Your dad was a fucking idiot for leaving you and your mom. That's all there is to it. He's an asshole, and that's on him, not you." Katsuki crosses his arms over his chest, finding it hard to look at Izuku's trembling form. He stares at his ugly red sneakers instead, at the ice cream cone splattered before them. "You've got to stop beating yourself up over something that you had no control over." Izuku pulls away from Aijiru, fixing Katsuki with a watery glare. "Just like how you totally don't blame yourself for your parents' divorce, right?" Denki hisses, "Dude." Katsuki meets Izuku's gaze, a wry smile turning his lips. "Guess we're both a bit fucked up, huh?" And Izuku's face falls, fresh tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Kaken. I didn't mean it. His voice breaks, and he grips the front of his shirt, knuckles white with strain. "It hurts so much." "I know. And your car," Izuku continues. "God, I'm so sorry." Katsuki takes a deep breath. "It's just a thing, Deku. Still, that was so messed up. Why did I never should've." He's rambling now, getting too wound up, too caught up in his head. Katsuki needs to break him out of it. "Deku." But Izuku keeps going. "This was all just a big mistake. I'm so stupid, Deku. I just didn't know what else to do. I had to see him. I had to know." Izuku. That gets his attention. His rambling stops, eyes wide and mouth agape as he stands in stunned silence. It's sad, Katsuki thinks, how just the simple use of his actual first name can elicit such a reaction from the other boy. But he'd dwell on that another time. He takes a step closer, and Izuku watches, wary. Before he can think twice, Katsuki closes the gap, pulling the smaller boy into a crushing hug. Izuku is stock still in his arms, tense as he holds his breath, undoubtedly surprised by the action. "Well, that makes two of them." "I'm sorry about your dad," Katsuki murmurs, gaze fixed somewhere on the horizon, arms wrapped securely around his friend. "And that I wasn't there for you back then. But I'm here now, okay? So don't try carrying this alone. Let me help you." The last words go unspoken, but Katsuki knows Izuku understands. Izuku inhales a deep, shuddering breath, and it's like a dam breaks inside. Izuku's arms reaching around to grip the back of Katsuki's t-shirt, face pressed into his shoulder as a fresh wave of sobs racks his body. He's coming apart, years and years of unresolved emotions, of bottled up anger and grief and pain spilling out through salty tears and strangled cries. And still 𝐬𝐻𝐬 holds him, hands gripping tighter, knowing it's not nearly enough to keep him together, to keep the pieces from splintering and shattering on the pavement below. So he doesn't try. He lets the boy break, lets him come apart with every shake and shudder, every desperate inhale punctuated by sobs. He can't help him stay together, but he'll sure as hell be around when he comes apart, prepared to gather up the pieces in the end. There's a new warmth around him, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 glances back to see that 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and Denki have joined the embrace, pressing close to 𝐬𝐻𝐬, gazes watery as they wrap their arms around him. 𝐬𝐻𝐬's cries only seem to intensify, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 doesn't blame him. It's a lot, right now, a lot of feelings running rampant, unguarded and uncontrolled. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 turns his gaze away again, squeezing his eyes shut against the pricks of heat that build up behind them. He's not sure how long they stand there. 4 boys huddled in a shitty Reno gas station, bawling their eyes out like little brats, but eventually, the tears subside. Denki and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 pull away first, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 wants to do the same, but he's not prepared to push 𝐬𝐻𝐬 away so soon. Not when the other boy needs this, not when they both still need this. He leaves it to 𝐬𝐻𝐬 to say when. Soon, 𝐬𝐻𝐬's breathing calms, and he lifts his head, cheeks stained with tears, nose runny, looking like an absolute mess. He sniffles, releasing his grip on 𝐬𝐻𝐬. Awkwardly, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 clears his throat, finally stepping away from the other boy. "Come on," he says, nodding his head towards the gas station. "Let's get you a new ice cream cone, a better ice cream cone, and then we'll get out of here. We'll put on 𝐼𝐻𝐬's god-awful road trip playlist. And we'll leave all this bullshit behind us, yeah?" 𝐬𝐻𝐬 nods. "Yeah." His voice is slightly hoarse from crying, and he coughs. 𝐬𝐻𝐬's just about to turn away, but stops when 𝐬𝐻𝐬 speaks again. "Thank you," he says quietly, unable to meet the blonde's eyes, gaze to the pavement below. "For sticking with me, even though I didn't deserve it." He resists the urge to roll his eyes, as if you don't deserve it. Instead, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 replies, "You've done the same for me already. We're even. Now come on." He lightly punches 𝐬𝐻𝐬 on the shoulder. "We've got a long road ahead of us." 𝐬𝐻𝐬 meets his gaze this time and smiles, really smiles, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 can't keep the grin from tugging at his own lips. For the record, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 says as the group makes their way back towards the gas station, "My playlist is not awful. It's a finely curated masterpiece." "Dude, I love you," Denki chuckles, draping an arm over the redhead's shoulders, "but your playlist is shit." 𝐼𝐻𝐬 makes a feigned noise of offense and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 laughs, airy and joyful. He seems better than before, if only just a little. Lighter somehow, as though the burden he had been carrying had lessened, spread out amongst 4 pairs of shoulders, heavy but manageable. And he's still broken, there's no question there. They all are, really, cracked and splintered in their own ways. No road trip was ever going to fix that. But at least now everything's out in the open, the pieces collected and gathered, ready to be remade into something stronger, something greater than the sum of their heartbreak. But that was a task for the future. For now, it's enough to simply carry on, broken but alive.